Chapter 1434, Supreme Soldier, Supreme God Realm Soldier. Supreme Soldier Type Supreme Holy Mage God. Soon, two figures walked out from the gate of summoning. The first figure was a middle-aged man. He was 8 feet tall and had dark golden pupils in his eyes. He wore a black armor with mysterious patterns and held a spiked club in his hand. Zhou frowned when he first looked at him. He could not help it. This guy looked too ordinary, not much different from an intermediate grade soldier type. The ability of the Supreme Soldier type is only to this extent. However, the way Zhou looked at him immediately changed when he moved his body slightly and crushed the surrounding space into a black line. With just a slight movement, it crushed the surrounding space. Even God spirits couldn't do this, right? Moreover, if the other party really had the power of a Supreme Soldier type, how much did he have to restrain his power so that he couldn't see it at all? Furthermore, Zhou could sense that the other party's armor and weapons were extraordinary. This was definitely not ordinary armor or weapon. Zhou had yet to look at his attributes list. However, he knew that he must have picked up a treasure. Then, he looked at the attributes list of this Supreme Soldier type with anticipation. Soldier name, Rock Dust, Territory, Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, Soldier type, Supreme God Realm Soldier, Supreme Soldier, Strength Level, Extraordinary Tier Elementary Grade, Ability Overview, a Supreme Soldier type inherited from the Supreme God Realm. It has the Supreme God Realm Physical Immunity Talent, the Soul Immunity Talent, the Elemental Immunity Talent, the Law Immunity Talent, and the Willpower Defense Talent. Almost no Supreme Soldier type of the same level can break through their defense. In addition, their attacks were above all types of attacks. Their attacks could easily injure the enemy, but the enemy's attacks could not cause fatal damage to them. In terms of close combat skills, they had also reached the level of a heavenly martial artist. All the Supreme God Realm soldiers in the myriad worlds could not compare to they in terms of combat skills. They could be said to be the hexagonal warriors among all the Supreme Soldier types. In the end, the Supreme God Realm armors and Supreme God Realm soldiers they were wearing were growth-type treasures that could grow into Supreme Divine artifacts with their soldier types. Moreover, in the hands of the Supreme God Realm soldiers, they could unleash terrifying power that exceeded Supreme Divine artifacts. Skills, Supreme Arms Talent, Strongest Divine Body, Supreme Arms Talent, Absolute Immunity, Supreme Arms Talent, God of Heavenly Martial Arts, Supreme Arms Talent, Immortality, Supreme Arms Talent, Divine Weapon Will, Supreme Arms Talent, Divine Weapon Integration, Supreme Arms Talent, Extreme Vitality, Supreme Arms Talent, Companion Divine Weapon, Supreme Arms Talent, Infinite Rebirth. Grade 4 Supreme God Level Developable Skill, Sea Covering Staff, Grade 4 Supreme God Level. Developable Skill, A World Within Reach, Grade 4 Supreme God Level Developable Skill, Vajra Hammer Technique, Grade 4 Supreme God Level Developable Skill, Thousand Shadows Mysterious Body Step. Grade 4 Supreme God Level Law Skill, Essence Destroying Staff, Supreme Divine Weapon Will Condensation Method, Sealed. Loyalty, 90, Potential, Master God Tier Advanced Grade, World Limit. Zhou looked at it and could only summarize one word on the attribute panel of this Supreme God Realm Soldier: invincible. His physical body was invincible. He had invincible spirit and defense against willpower. His combat skills were also invincible. Not only did he have the inheritance of the Supreme God Realm's will, he also had armors and weapons that could be upgraded along with their strength and realm. He could even be upgraded to the Supreme God Realm. When Zhou saw this, he could not help but take a deep breath. Even if he had Heavenly Fate Di Huang's talent and would obtain countless divine artifacts and even Supreme Divine artifacts in the future, he didn't have any confidence in providing Supreme Divine artifacts for all his soldier types and soldiers in the future. However, This Supreme God Realm weapon had armor and weapons that could grow to the level of a Supreme Divine artifact. As expected of a Supreme God Realm soldier. Just having a 100% chance of obtaining a Supreme Divine artifact in the future is enough to make countless Supreme God Realm experts envious, let alone having other advantages. Zhou thought in surprise. Then, he looked at another soldier. This soldier wore a divine robe with a golden pattern on his glabella. He held a scepter with countless law engravings surrounding him, making him look like the master of all laws. He looked at him. A text notification appeared. Soldier name, Zhang Wanzong, territory, Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, soldier type, Supreme Holy Mage God, Supreme Soldier, strength level, extraordinary tier elementary grade, ability overview, a Supreme Soldier type that has inherited the Supreme Law of Spells. It has the Supreme God Realm Willpower Immunity Talent, the Soul Immunity Talent, and is proficient in all elemental spells and elemental law skills in the myriad worlds. The Supreme Holy Mage God suppressed all other spellcasters in terms of level. The elemental spell attacks and elemental law skill attacks of other spellcasters would automatically weaken by 50% when facing the Supreme Holy Mage God. When facing other spellcasters, the elemental spell attacks and elemental law skill attacks would automatically increase by 100%. The Supreme Holy Mage God could instantly release all elemental spells and elemental law skills, but the price was that it required twice the magic power/divine power. The ultimate Holy Archmage has mastered a type of Supreme Divine technique that is exclusive to them. This spell has reached the pinnacle of the law of spells, and the power and effect of the spell is 10 times that of the same level. Skills, Supreme Soldier type talent Holy Technique Body, Supreme Soldier type talent Willpower Immunity, Supreme Soldier type talent, Soul Immunity, Supreme Soldier type talent All Methods Proficiency, Supreme Soldier type talent Spell Supreme, Supreme Soldier type talent Spell Authority, Supreme Soldier type talent Instantaneous Spell, Supreme Soldier type talent, Holy Technique, Supreme Soldier type talent, Supreme Technique, Supreme God Realm Enhanceable Spell Power of 4 symbols, Supreme God Realm Enhancement Spell Instant Movement, Supreme God Realm Enhancement Spell Healing Technique, Supreme God Realm Enhancement Spell, Supreme Divine Technique, Supreme Divine Technique, Supreme Divine Technique, Heavenly Technique, Loyalty, 90, Potential, Master God Tier Advanced Grade, World Limit. Zhou carefully read every skill in the other party's skill column. After reading it, he couldn't help but take a deep breath as a smile appeared on his face. As expected of a Supreme Soldier type. The other party could be said to be a soldier-type profession that had reached the pinnacle of spells. Among those of the same level, a Supreme Holy Mage God could probably defeat 100 forbidden mages. Moreover, the effects of the other party's Supreme Divine techniques were also very shocking. Such Supreme Divine techniques were somewhat similar to Forbidden Mage spells, but it was the ultimate evolution of Forbidden Mage spells. If this Supreme Divine technique was used on the battlefield, the effect it could cause would be at least 10 times or even 100 times of the Forbidden Mage spell. Furthermore, the Supreme Holy Mage God is immune to both will and spirit. That's amazing. Zhou sighed. Starting from the Master God tier, to the Supreme God realm, and even to willpower level existences later on, the higher the level of existence, the more they began to pay attention to developing the power of willpower. Willpower attacks, willpower defense methods, willpower control methods, willpower secret techniques, and even willpower divine artifacts. All sorts of willpower-type techniques appeared endlessly. He could naturally deal with these methods since the Supreme Holy Mage Gods were immune to willpower. Just based on this point alone, the Supreme Holy Mage Gods could be considered a high-level soldier-type profession. The further they went, the stronger they would become. With these two supreme professions, I have a certain level of self-preservation in the ultimate void battlefield. Zhou muttered to himself. A supreme soldier type could be considered a top-notch soldier type even on the ultimate void battlefield. For example, the myriad evil demon ancestor, who was currently in charge of the entire Ultimate Void battlefield, had a supreme soldier type called the Ultimate Evil Spirit. It was precisely because he had a large number of such supreme soldier types and his identity as a reserve lord of all races that he could convince the god spirits of the supreme will camp to fight against him and the ultimate void creatures. It could be seen how powerful the supreme soldier type was. Chapter 1435, Legendary Dragon Race, 9 Divine Dragons, Kiruate. Ninth Clone, 1. Then, Zhou did not think too much about it. He first threw the remaining Supreme God Realm Soldier Recruitment Books and Supreme Holy Mage God Recruitment Books into the Gate of Summoning. Then, he spent 100 true God-tier intermediate grade divine crystals to recruit them all in one go and place them on the Eternal Mothership. When he saw the 64 low-level extraordinary tier Supreme God Realm Soldiers and Supreme Holy Mage Gods appear out of thin air in the internal world of the Eternal Mothership, he could not help but feel endless heroism. With these Supreme Soldier types in hand, other than the territories of will-level existences, where in the myriad worlds could he not go? He only appeased the burning flames of ambition in his heart after a long while. Then, he opened the original Dragon Abyss interface and spent 100 true God-tier intermediate-grade divine crystals to summon 66,666,660 pure-blooded dragons. He also placed them in the Eternal Mothership. He habitually glanced at the pure-blooded dragons. When he saw the figure of one of the pure-blooded dragons, he was first stunned before he couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. That was because this dragon was a legendary dragon. Not bad, not bad. The 30% probability was really not fake. Zhou looked at the other party. This legendary dragon was covered in 7-colored gem scales. There was a ring of gem dragon horns on its head. They clustered together, looking like a gem crown. Surging elemental fluctuations surrounded this pure-blooded dragon, vaguely forming a boundless universe-level elemental realm. Legendary Dragon, 9 Divine Dragons, Kirut. It's actually this dragon? Zhou was a little surprised. This legendary dragon from the Gem Dragon race was an existence comparable to the Goddess of Magic as the two progenitors of magic. If the Goddess of Magic was good at all-round magic and had dabbled in all kinds of magic and was proficient in them. Furthermore, he had created the magic network, benefiting all the spellcasters in the myriad worlds. Then, Kiruate was only good at elemental magic. However, because he was deeply involved in the field of elemental magic and had major achievements in the field of elemental magic, Kiruate's reputation even surpassed that of the Goddess of Magic. The reason why this legendary dragon was called the 9 Divine Dragons was because he was extremely good at the magic of the 9 magical domains of earth, water, wind, fire, lightning, light, darkness, gems, and chaos. In these 9 magical domains, even the Goddess of Magic was inferior to Kiruate. As Zhou pondered, the legendary dragon also noticed his gaze. It transformed into a white light and flew in front of Zhou. It appeared in its true form and said respectfully. Legendary Dragon, Kiruate greets your majesty the Lord of the Regal Dragon. His Majesty, the Lord of the Regal Dragon. Zhou was speechless before he smiled. Your Excellency is too polite. Welcome to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. It's Kiruate's honor to be able to join the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom and become a part of your Majesty's forces. Kiruate lowered its stance very much. Zhou guessed that this was not only because he was a reserve member of the Lord of all races, more importantly, it was because of his identity as the Lord of the Regal Dragon. In this world where lords were respected, the status of the Regal Dragon was not inferior to the Primordial Dragon at all after all. It was even slightly higher. Zhou chatted with the other party for a while before sending someone to bring it and the other pure-blooded dragons to the Dragon God army. Then, he spent another 100 true God-tier intermediate-grade divine crystals to recruit today's new subjects. In the end, he realized that he had recruited more than 510 million new subjects today. He had summoned more than 80 million new subjects than usual, including the 13 true God-tier intermediate-grade God spirits. That's not the most important thing. What was important was that because of the Lord talent, heavenly summoning, he realized that these new subjects had all become professionals with extraordinary tier elementary grade strength. However, their professional columns were empty. In other words, these subjects only had the strength of extraordinary tier elementary grade professionals, but they did not have any specific profession abilities. Oh, boy. Can that happen? Is this a bug? Zhou clicked his tongue. He looked at these jobless people who had no profession but extraordinary power. How should he nurture these subjects? He pondered. Even though more than 500 million extraordinary tier subjects were nothing to Zhou, he still had to prepare them for their future development with the reason that he had to be responsible for them as a lord. Just give me the profession class change certificate. This way, they can directly become extraordinary tier elementary grade professionals. Zhou quickly made a decision. This way, they could have their own combat strength as quickly as possible. However, Zhou had no intention of letting them join the main combat army. Same old rules. Professionals who came out of the Gate of Summoning would all join the Homeland Defense Army first. Want to join the main combat army? That's fine, he just had to pass the elimination system and come up through the competitive selection. The soldiers of the main combat army had very heavy war missions. He wanted to let true experts join in. As for what class change certificate to use, it was naturally the class change certificate of two supreme soldier types, the Supreme God Realm Soldier and the Supreme Holy Mage God. Now, he had 64 capital units class change certificates of supreme professions every day. After the main army completed their job transition, they could be used by the soldiers of the Homeland Defense Army before being used by the reserve recruits. Right at that moment. Boom. 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 Chapter 1436, Legendary Dragon Race, 9 Divine Dragons, Kiruate. Ninth Clone, 2, 11 pillars of light shot out from the Reincarnation Sacred Palace, piercing through the Divine Kingdom world and shooting into the starry sky, producing various shocking phenomena in the starry sky. There were 11 true God-tier advanced grade God spirits who had advanced to Master God-tier at this moment. Without exception, they all belonged to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. At this moment, all the forces in the myriad worlds were shocked. Even those Supreme God Realm factions could not help but look sideways at this moment. When Zhou saw this, a smile appeared on his face. A moment later, the advancement phenomenon dissipated. Then, 11 divine lights flew out of the Reincarnation Sacred Palace and landed in front of Zhou. Greetings, Your Majesty. N the 6 new Master God tiers of the human race and the 5 new Master God tiers of the people of foreign races said excitedly and respectfully. There's no need to be so polite. Congratulations first. From now on, you're the worshipped Master Gods of our Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Zhou smiled. It's all thanks to His Majesty that we're where we are today. We will not forget His Majesty's kindness to us. A new Master God tier of the human race said respectfully and gratefully. The other 10 new Master God tiers looked at Zhou gratefully. Be it the cultivation of laws, the acquisition of energy for advancement, or the inheritance of the Master God tier, the most important factors for advancing to the Master God tier were almost all not given to them by His Majesty. Therefore, when they said this, they were completely sincere and not fake at all. Zhou smiled and naturally did not deny it. Then, he waved his right hand, and 11 world rings appeared out of thin air in front of him. The usual. I'll still give each of you a Master God Tier Elementary Grade Divine Artifact first and temporarily lend you 5 Master God Tier Divine Artifacts. These Master God Tier Divine Artifacts are all suitable for your nomological path. You have to cherish and use them well. Also, there's a Master God Tier Promotion celebration tonight. Don't miss it. Zhou smiled. Yes, Your Grace. The 11 Master God Tiers said respectfully. The surrounding God spirits looked at the 11 new Master God Tier with smiles on their faces. In the future, they would all be their colleagues and comrades. With them around, the forces of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom could become stronger. The God spirits who followed the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom could also benefit from this. They would naturally be happy. As for Zhou, he was feeling the lower limit of the potential of the human subjects. Then, a smile appeared on his face. As expected, after the addition of these 6 human Master God Tiers, the lower limit of the potential of the human subjects had shockingly increased from Epic Tier Elementary Grade to Epic Tier Intermediate Grade. There was even a new Master God Tier slot. If he wanted to raise the minimum potential of Epic Tier Intermediate Grade to Epic Tier Advanced Grade, he needed a total of 20 new Master Gods. 20 new Master Gods of the human race. It's a little difficult, but it's not impossible. The corners of Zhou's lips curled up. At this rate of development, it would probably take less than 7 days for him to gain another 20 or so human Master Gods. At that time, the minimum potential of the human race would be raised to the Epic Tier Advanced Grade. However, then he thought of something and frowned. Just the Epic Tier Advanced Grade requires a total of 20 new Master God Tiers of the human race. Then how many human Master God Tiers will it take to advance to the Legendary Tier Elementary Grade? Zhou muttered to himself. Then, he didn't think too much about it and began to use the doppelganger technique. He consumed half of his origin and created his 9th clone, naming him Zhou 9. The position that Zhou arranged for him was to not participate in external battles or government affairs. He usually cultivated in the reincarnation sacred palace and comprehended the laws and the power of will. When an external enemy attacked the Divine Kingdom, he had to fight for the country immediately and face the enemy. To put it simply, it was to look after the house. Zhou 9 gladly accepted the order, just a little dissatisfied with his name. However, Zhou didn't mind. He waved his hand and let he cultivate. Then, he counted the number of soldiers under his command. He originally had 146 capital units with 264,117,457,818,321 soldiers, 239,618,609 god spirits, 33,064 true gods, and 116 master gods. With today's new recruits, pure-blooded dragons, new master gods, and his 9th clone joining, the number of troops under him reached 210 capital units, 2,641,241,173,818,321 soldiers, 240,384,609 god spirits, 33,729 true god tiers, and 129 master gods. 200 capital units. When Zhou saw this number, he could not help but smile in satisfaction. No race had such a terrifying number of troops among the myriad races of the heavens. Then, he called Bai Yun over and asked he to gather the army and prepare to head to the Chaos Sea. A moment later, the armies were gathered, the 4 clones, Zhou Fight, Zhou Marshall, Zhou Win and Saturday boarded the Eternal Mothership and headed to the Chaos Sea through the Shadow World. In the Chaos Sea, Dream Demon Realm. This was the territory ruled by the Dream Demon God race, and the Dream God race could be considered one of the top 10 races in the entire Chaos Gods race. Swoosh! A shadow vortex suddenly appeared in the high-tier deity-level regional territory in the Dream Demon Realm. Then, an incomparably huge and technologically advanced silver cosmic warship slowly flew out of the shadow vortex and landed above the divine city. When the many dream life forms of the dream god city saw this eternal mothership and sensed the aura of the many master gods emitted from inside, they immediately became nervous. Right at that moment, a yellowish-brown master god that looked like a leopard or a bear with a long nose and emitted the aura of a master god tier advanced grade appeared in the sky above the divine city. He was the current patriarch and strongest expert of the Dream Eater clan, Dream Eater God Lord. This is Common People's Regal's master god tier advanced grade battleship, Eternal Mothership. This guy has always been quiet the last few times he appeared. Why is he suddenly making a big fuss this time? Dream Eater God Lord's expression did not look too good. Especially when he sensed the aura of more than 100 supremacies in the Eternal Mothership, his expression became even uglier and even a little afraid. Such a number of master gods was enough to easily destroy their entire dream tribe. There were only 5 master gods in the demon race and only 8 master gods including the master gods of the subsidiary races. They were no match for so many master gods brought by the common people's regal. He looked at the frightened and panicking citizens of the dream demon divine city below and could not help but take a deep breath. He shouted, "I wonder why your excellency common people's regal suddenly descended above the main city of my dream demon realm." After a while, Zhou Fight's calm voice came from the Eternal Mothership. "Dream Eater God Lord, you don't have to be nervous. This emperor was just bored and suddenly patrolled this emperor's territory. It's just that the way I appeared might have given you a bit of a scare. Don't be afraid. This emperor will go to the next place to tour." After saying that, the Eternal Mothership that covered the divine city rumbled for a while before flying into the distance and quickly disappearing into the dark universe. The Dream Eater God Lord looked in the direction where the Eternal Mothership disappeared. His expression suddenly darkened after a while. The next second, the entire Dream Demon Divine City turned the reality here into an illusory dream because of the divine power emitted by the Dream Eater God Lord. And the Dream Eater God Lord was the only and supreme master god in this illusory dream. What a common people's regal. You actually treat our Chaos Gods race as nothing, relying on your status as a reserve member of the Lord of all races. Let's end this today. From now on, this day every year will be your common people's regal's death anniversary. The Dream Eater God Lord said coldly. It was as if he was looking at a ship of death looking at the spot where the Eternal Mothership disappeared. Your Majesty. That Dream Eater God Lord seems very unconvinced. Furthermore, he really seemed to have prepared something looking at how confident he is. Qi Xiantian said. That's what they're waiting for. Otherwise, how could our Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom have a reason to directly deal with the Chaos Gods race or even the other 2 top races? Zhou Fight said calmly. Then, he stroked the supreme holy sword in front of him, and said softly, "Even though the status of the Lord of all races as a reserve force allows me to surpass all races, I can't casually attack foreign races and even ask them not to resist. In any case, the 3 top bloodline races already see this emperor as a thorn in their side. This emperor will give them a chance to let us have a fair battle with them. This emperor is against the 3 top bloodline races. After this battle, this emperor should be able to completely subdue them. When the time comes, in this myriad worlds, no factions would be a match for this emperor's Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom other than Supreme God Realm factions and willpower level factions. This emperor can also truly be at ease and head to the ultimate void battlefield." Chapter 1437, Spacetime Chaotic Divine Demon 1 Deal. 1. Your Majesty is farsighted. The general said respectfully. Zhou Fight did not say much. He stretched out his right hand and saw the Bodhi Supreme appear in his hand. Bodhi Supreme, how many chaotic divine demons are there in the Chaos Sea now? He asked. Let me see. TSK, there are 5 chaotic divine demons in the Chaos Sea today. Bodhi Supreme seemed to have discovered something interesting and chuckled. 5 chaotic divine demons. Zhou Fight raised his eyebrows. Could his luck be at its peak? He had clearly killed many chaotic divine demons in the past few days. Why were there more and more chaotic divine demons? Tell us the location of the chaotic divine demons. Zhou Fight did not think too much about it and immediately asked. Okay, I'll pass it on to your Zero. It's done. See for yourself. Bodhi Supreme said lazily and then stopped talking. Upon hearing this, Zhou immediately asked Zero to bring out the map that Bodhi Supreme had passed to him. Hearing this, Zero immediately pulled out the map. When the map and the location of the 5 chaotic divine demons appeared, everyone present was a little surprised. This was because they saw that for some reason, the 5 chaotic divine demons were gathered together. What's this all about? Are they meeting? Interesting. This is the first time I've encountered something like this. The generals and god spirits discussed in surprise. Zhou was also very surprised to see this. Then, he didn't think too much about it and directly said, since they have chosen to gather together, it saves us the trouble of running around looking for them. Zero, let's go straight to them. Yes, Your Grace. Zero said respectfully. Then, he activated the Eternal Mothership and entered the Dark Universe, flying towards the 5 chaotic divine demons. At the same time, the Dream Eater God Lord also told the Chaos Sea's Patriarch, the Heaven Curse Beast, about the Lord of the Blazing Sun's return. In a place filled with chaotic airflow, chaotic divine lightning rumbled, and chaotic chains spread everywhere. The Heaven Curse Beast and 2 other top Master Gods were gathered here. One of the Master Gods was the Patriarch of the Primordial Spirit Race, Origin. As for the other Master God tier, he was the Patriarch of the Shepherd's God Race. He was known as the King of all Gods, Di Huang. Heaven Curse Beast, the seal here has been strengthened by the Supreme Will again. Di Huang smiled faintly. Gentlemen. The Dream Eater God Lord has just sent news that the Lord of the Blazing Sun has already entered the Chaos Sea. We should make a move. The Heaven Curse Beast had no intention of talking about these things. After saying that, Origin and Di Huang's gazes immediately landed on his face, their gazes revealing a questioning look. I've already contacted that person, the Heaven Curse Beast said in a deep voice. That person is very willing to help us. He doesn't even need us to pay anything. He just needs to give him a chance to get close to the common people's regal and attack him. Origin and Di Huang were stunned when they heard this. Disbelief appeared on their faces. Right now, the common people's regal was the Lord of all races reserve. He was the most popular person in front of the Supreme Will. Under such circumstances, there were already very few existences who dared to attack the common people's regal. Moreover, even if they wanted to attack, it was impossible for them to attack for free. They definitely had to take some benefits. They were already prepared to spend a lot of money, but they didn't expect that the Lord that the Heaven Curse Beast invited actually didn't want anything and wanted to attack common people's regal. How much hatred did he have for the common people's regal? Does that person have a deep grudge with the common people's regal? Origin asked. It's not convenient for me to say much. I can only tell you that he will definitely do his best to kill the common people's regal. Don't ask too many questions. His lordship doesn't want to reveal too much. The Heaven Curse Beast said mysteriously. All right. Origin and Di Huang did not ask further. They couldn't wait for their relationship with the mysterious powerhouse to be as shallow as possible. This way, even if it was exposed in the future, he would be less guilty. There is no time to lose. Let's go. We must kill the common people's regal on this trip. Otherwise, we really won't be able to get rid of him anymore. The Heaven Curse Beast looked at Origin and Di Huang solemnly. Origin and Di Huang nodded silently. On the other side, after flying in the dark universe for more than 2 hours, they finally arrived at the place where the 5 chaotic divine demons were gathered. Zhou Feit stood in front of the virtual external projection and clicked his tongue in wonder as he looked at the 5 chaos divine demons gathered together to chat. It seems like these 5 chaotic divine demons aren't plotting anything. But it doesn't matter even if it's a conspiracy. With my current strength, unless that chaotic divine demon's Di Huang comes, basically nothing will happen. Then, he stopped thinking and teleported away from the eternal mothership, arriving not far from the 5 chaotic divine demons. When Zhou Feit appeared, the 5 chaotic divine demons seemed to have sensed something and turned to look at him. When they saw that it was a human, they seemed to have thought of something and their eyes became fiery. Zhou Feit, he smiled and said as he thought to himself. Hello, chaotic divine demons. This emperor is the ruler of the blazing sun divine kingdom. I'm here to talk to us about a deal, then kill us, huh? Before Zhou Feit could finish speaking, one of the chaotic divine demons, who was surrounded by space-time fluctuations, immediately interrupted him. Exactly. Zhou Feit was stunned for a moment before smiling. It looks like this deal is going to go a lot smoother. Zhou Feit had a premonition. The next second, as expected, he heard the other party say, let us promise you this, too. But you have to pay us 5 Master God tier divine artifacts for each chaotic divine demon. Chapter 1438, Spacetime Chaotic Divine Demon 1 Deal 1, 2, so we'll let you kill us and get the Chaos Divine treasure you want. The Spacetime Chaotic Divine Demon said. Zhou Feit raised his eyebrows slightly and said calmly, it seems like you already know about this Emperor's previous deal with the other chaotic divine demons. It's just 5 Master God tier divine artifacts. Do you really think that Master God tier divine artifacts are as common as cabbages? If that's the bottom line of your deal, we don't see any point in discussing it. Goodbye. After saying that, Zhou Feit did not seem to care. He turned around and left, looking like he wanted to return to the eternal mothership. The 5 chaotic divine demons were stunned by Zhou Feit's decisiveness. According to the information they received, didn't this common people's regal really need chaos divine treasures? Even when the wind chaotic divine demons suddenly raised the price and demanded for Master God tier divine artifacts, the common people's regal agreed without any hesitation. They had only raised the price again. Why did this fellow turn around and leave without even negotiating? Common people's regal, are you sure you don't want to trade with us? I remember that as a lord of all races, you need a large number of chaos divine treasures to advance to your divine kingdom territory, right? The spacetime chaotic divine demon spoke again. It's true that this emperor needs a large number of chaos divine artifacts, but this emperor isn't a fool. 5 precious Master God tier divine artifacts in exchange for a renewable chaos divine artifact. If it were you, would you do such a business? Since your asking price is too high, this emperor can only wait for the next time to trade with other chaotic divine demons. I'm sure the other chaotic divine demons, Your Excellency, would be very willing to take the initiative to look for this emperor and make a deal with him after learning of this emperor's sincerity. Zhou Feit said without turning his head. The spacetime chaotic divine demons and the other 4 chaotic divine demons fell silent. They knew that Zhou Feit was right. Using one of their chaos divine treasures could be exchanged for 4 master divine artifacts that could greatly increase their strength. 99% of the chaotic divine demons in their divine demon realm were willing to make this deal. Wasn't it just losing some of his cultivation? Cultivating in seclusion for thousands of years would make up for it. When the time came, he would be a good man again. However, a few thousand years couldn't be exchanged for 4 Master God tier divine artifacts. The divine demon realm was not a peaceful place. In addition, Di Huang of the chaotic divine demons had the intention to indulge them. Treasures, resources, power, status, strength. They needed the chaotic divine demons to fight for it with their own strength. Therefore, they really needed these 4 Master God tier divine artifacts to increase their strength. What now? Are we really going to give up this trading opportunity and let the common people's regal find other chaotic divine demons to trade in the future? The magic figure chaotic divine demon asked. The strength chaotic divine demons beside him became anxious before the spacetime chaotic divine demons could reply. The wind chaotic divine demons have already relied on the few Master God tier divine artifacts they obtained from the common people's regal to show off in the divine demon realm and obtain resources and status that they didn't even dare to think about before. One step slows. If we don't trade this time, the other chaotic divine demons will have already left us far behind by the time we want to trade again. We definitely can't fall behind them. Otherwise, we definitely won't be able to protect our status and resources. The other 2 chaotic divine demons did not speak, but the eagerness in their eyes expressed their intentions. The spacetime chaotic divine demon could not help but sigh. He originally wanted to drag it out and test the bottom line of this common people's regal. But looking at these pig-headed teammates, he knew that he couldn't delay any longer. Otherwise, not only would he not be able to obtain the Master God tier divine artifact, he would also lose the right to be trusted among them. Your Excellency Regal. Let's do it your way. Let's make a deal. The spacetime chaotic divine demon said. Zhou Fight stopped in his tracks and turned to look at them with a faint smile. That's right. This is a fair trade. It's not a loss for either of us, is it? The 5 chaotic divine demons nodded. I'll leave it to you now. Zhou Fight asked. Leave it to me. I have mastered the secret technique of the spacetime secret treasure, which allows me to keep my treasures intact even after I die. The spacetime chaotic divine demon said. Okay. Zhou Fight nodded and did not say anything else. He took out 20 world rings and threw them to them, and they looked at Zhou Fight in surprise. It was as if he didn't expect the other party to actually trust him so much. These were 20 Master God tier divine artifacts, yet he actually gave them to him without saying anything. Common people's regal, as expected of the Lord of all races, reserves personally chosen by the supreme will. He's got an extraordinary breadth of mind. The spacetime chaotic divine demons complimented him. Then, they immediately gathered with the other 4 chaotic divine demons. Their divine senses entered the world rings and checked the Master God divine artifacts stored inside. The 5 chaotic divine demons heaved a sigh of relief and smiled after confirming that there was no problem. The Master God tier divine artifact is fine. The wind chaotic divine demon was telling the truth. Is there really such a person who is willing to give up a Master God tier divine artifact for a chaotic divine artifact? This common people's regal is indeed a magnanimous person. He actually handed it over to us so easily. Isn't he afraid that we'll run away after taking? Since he dared to take it out for us to take away, it means that he has the strength. He isn't afraid of us taking away his Master Divine artifact. That's right. If we get greedy, I'm afraid not only will we die here, but we won't even get a single Master God tier divine artifact. That's right. If we get greedy, I'm afraid not only will we die here, but we won't even get a single Master God tier divine artifact. Right at that moment. Among the 5 chaotic divine demons, the shadow chaotic divine demon suddenly sent a voice transmission. Spacetime, can you take us back to the divine realm? The other 3 chaotic divine demons also looked at the spacetime chaotic divine demon strangely. Obviously, they wanted to take advantage and ran away. The spacetime chaotic divine demon's expressions did not change, but he was already cursing in his heart. He calmly sent a voice transmission. No. As a spacetime chaotic divine demons, I'm most sensitive to spacetime fluctuations. His Excellency, the common people's regal, seems to be extremely generous, but in fact, he has already locked down the surrounding time and space. Now I can feel that I can no longer open the gate of gods and demons and return to the demonic dimension. As soon as he said that, the 4 chaotic divine demons were shocked. Doesn't that mean that if the other party doesn't give us the Master God tier divine artifact, he can also easily kill us? And we won't be able to escape? They came to their senses. Yeah. The fact that we can stand here safe and sound and even obtain the Master God divine artifact of the common people's regal is already the other party's greatest pity. Don't think about anything else. Otherwise, if anything happens, you brought it on yourselves. The Spacetime Chaotic Divine Demon said calmly. All right. The 4 chaotic divine demons no longer had such thoughts. The Spacetime Chaotic Divine Demons heaved a sigh of relief. Then, they flew in front of Zhou Fight. The Spacetime Chaotic Divine Demon was the first to speak. Your Excellency. We're ready. However, before you kill us for the Chaos Divine Treasure, I have something to say. Oh. Zhou Fight raised his eyebrows and said. Please do. The Spacetime Chaotic Divine Demons took a deep breath and said calmly, As your Majesty can see, I'm a Spacetime Chaotic Divine Demon. I'm best at bringing chaotic divine demons from the divine demon realm to the outside world. With my current abilities, I can bring up to 10 chaotic divine demons to the outside world at a time. Therefore, I wish to make a deal with your Majesty. I can bring 10 chaotic divine demons who are willing to trade with your Majesty every day until your Majesty doesn't need the chaotic divine treasure. So what do you want? Zhou Fight asked with an unchanged expression. I want a Supreme God Realm inheritance of the law of space. The Spacetime Chaotic Divine Demon said solemnly. Chapter 1439, Huge Battle Begins. 1. The Supreme God Realm Inheritance of the Law of Space. Zhou Fight looked at him in surprise. This fellow had a big appetite. He thought that him just wanted more Master God tier divine artifacts. He didn't expect him to ask for the Supreme God Realm's inheritance right from the start. Moreover, it was the Supreme God Realm's inheritance of the laws of time and space. Such an inheritance was considered rare even among the many Supreme God Realm inheritances. However, that was only for the other factions. To Zhou Fight, he could easily kill a Master God of the Law of Space and obtain a Supreme God Realm inheritance of the Law of Space. He even had a Grade 2 Supreme God Realm Supreme God inheritance. But then again, Zhou Fight was willing to pay a lot even though the other party had a big appetite. I can bring 10 chaotic divine demons who are willing to trade with your Majesty every day until your Majesty doesn't need the chaotic divine treasure. In other words, if he did not say that he did not need it, the other party would bring him an endless stream of chaos divine treasures for the rest of his life. This was equivalent to binding him to him for the rest of his life. Zhou Fight looked like he was deep in thought. The Spacetime Chaotic Divine Demons hurriedly said addition. I know it's high, but I will be doing a lot. Bringing 10 chaotic divine demons who are willing to trade with your Majesty every day to your Majesty, the risk I take is actually very high. There is no telling what will happen in the future, and this process will be interrupted after all. If that really happens, even if I break the contract, I'm willing to sell myself to your Majesty and serve you for the rest of my life. If your Majesty doesn't believe me, I have a Supreme God Realm contract here. I'm willing to sign a contract with your Majesty regarding this transaction. And you are so sure I can get a Supreme God Realm Law of Space inheritance so easily? Zhou Fight looked at him. It might not necessarily be an inheritance. Other key treasures and resources that can help me advance to the Supreme God Realm are also fine. Our deal can be considered as complete as long as your Majesty can give me a 50% chance of advancing to the Supreme God Realm. Actually, if it were other God spirits or even other Supreme God Realms, I wouldn't trust them so much to be able to give me the opportunity to advance to the Supreme God Realm. But His Majesty is different. You are the Lord of all races reserve. In the future, you will become a supreme existence like the supreme will. When the time comes, any amount of resources in your hands is enough for me to advance to the supreme God realm. The space-time chaotic divine demon said. For an existence like the supreme will, or even an ordinary will-level existence, it was not too difficult for them to take out a supreme God realm inheritance. It could even be said to be very easy. He had also thought for a long time before looking for the Lord of the Blazing Sun as a trading partner. While the other party had yet to become a will-level existence, and was not even a master god, he believed that with this common people's Regal's past accomplishments, as long as he did not die midway, there was a high chance that HW would become a supreme god realm existence in the future, or even a will-level existence. However, he believed that with this common people's Regal's past accomplishments, as long as he did not die midway, there was a high chance that he would become a supreme god realm existence in the future, or even a will-level existence. However, for the sake of his future and the fact that he didn't have anyone else to trade with, he could only gamble like this. He would not hesitate even if he lost the bet. He was too eager to become a supreme god realm expert. Or rather, which top master god tier did not desire to become a supreme god realm? Okay. This emperor promises you. Give me the contract. Zhou Fight said without hesitation. The space-time chaotic divine demon was overjoyed. He immediately took out a blank contract book. After both parties had drawn up the contents of the contract, he immediately signed the contract. After signing the contract, the space-time chaotic divine demon heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. His future supreme god realm path was finally settled. The other chaotic divine demons looked at the space-time chaotic divine demons strangely, mockingly, or enviously. Law of space supreme god realm inheritance. How dare he ask for that? While it is true that the other party had unlimited potential as a reserve army for the Lord of all races, did you forget that there were 3 other lords of all races in reserve before him? How long had they been the Lord of all races reserve army for? They are just supreme god realm experts now. The young supreme god realm you're betting on is not even a master god. He has no advantage in front of those 3 Lord of all races reserves. You're even willing to bet on this? How desperate. The 4 chaotic divine demons were not optimistic about the space-time chaotic divine demon's choice. The space-time chaotic divine demon also noticed their gazes, but he didn't care. At least I tried, what about you lot? Come and kill us. The space-time chaotic divine demon said. Okay. Zhou Fight nodded. Just as he was about to take action, he suddenly sensed something and looked up at the sky. There was an ocean in the sky. At this moment, a vast amount of chaotic airflow rolled to both sides like a sea, revealing the mighty army behind the chaotic airflow. The army consists of 4 parts. The main elite force was the original spirit race, the Chaos Gods race, and the Shepherd's God race. The other army consisted of the elite subsidiary races of the 3 top bloodline races. They had about 10,000 elite subsidiary races, forming an army that was even more astonishing than the combined forces of the 3 bloodline races. Chapter 1440, Huge Battle Begins. 2. The 3 top-notch bloodline races had only brought over 300 capital units of troops. And this army of more than 10,000 elite subsidiary races had more than 800 capital units troops. Furthermore, even though this 1,000-odd capital units army had not reached the God Spirit realm, they were wearing specially made clothes with the Chaos attribute. Therefore, they could survive and fight freely in the chaotic airflow without being injured by the chaotic airflow and chaotic divine lightning. In addition, the master gods of the 3 top bloodline races added up to more than 1,000. There were more than 300,000 true gods and 2 billion god spirits. Even Zhou Fight himself held his breath for a second when he saw such a terrifying army, let alone these 5 chaotic divine demons. However, his expression returned to calmness. This is the strength unleashed by the three top bloodline races going all out. It had to be said that such a strength was indeed ridiculous. But this emperor isn't subpar either. Zhou Feit thought to himself. At the same time, far away in the reincarnation sacred palace of the blazing sun divine kingdom, Zhou slowly opened his eyes. Scenes were reflected in his eyes. It was the scene of the confrontation between the two sides in the Chaos Sea. Such a great battle. I have to watch the battle even if it disturbs my cultivation. Zhou said with a smile. At the same time, the myriad races quickly learned of this news and used their own methods to spy on the world-shaking battle that was about to erupt. They all understood that this was a battle that they might not see in countless years. The three top bloodline races versus the newly promoted Lord of all races. No matter who won or lost, the consequences would be far-reaching. It might even decide the direction of this era. At the same time, they could not help but exclaim. As expected of the three top bloodline races. They even dared to have designs on the Lord of all races. This time, this newly promoted Lord of all races reserve army would probably die before he fulfilled his ambitions and ascended to the position of the Supreme Lord. They were not optimistic about this common people's regal. The common people's regal had only become the Lord of all races reserve army for a short period of time after all. His strength had yet to develop. In addition, the three top-tier bloodline races were going all out. The difference in strength between the two sides was too great. They were so big that they couldn't see any hope of the Lord of all races reserve army winning. Therefore, they felt that it was impossible for common people's regal to win. I wonder how the three top bloodline races will face the Supreme Will's accountability after the common people's regal dies. And how does the Supreme Will deal with the three top bloodline races? All the gods thought of this. Strictly speaking, the combined status of the three top bloodline races was inferior to this Lord of all races. However, if this Lord of all races reserve army died, would the Supreme Will really punish the three most important top bloodline races under him for the sake of a dead Lord of all races reserve army? The dead would be useless after all. From the perspective of benefits and the overall situation, there was no need to lose more because of a dead person, right? Moreover, no matter how one looked at it, a reserve army Lord of all races who could be surrounded and killed by various races felt that such a reserve army of the Lord of all races was not strong enough. Therefore, the three top bloodline races were actually gambling that the Supreme Will would not kill them just because of such a Lord of all races reserve army. They would at most be punished. However, it would just be a punishment. When they made the plan to surround and kill common people's regal, they were already prepared for this. Speaking of which, after the three top bloodline races and more than 10,000 elite subsidiary races led an army of more than 1,000 capital units to the army of the blazing sun divine kingdom, the heaven curse beast's low and cold voice slowly sounded. Common people's regal. Surrender. We led an army of more than 1,000 capital units, 2 billion god spirits, 300,000 true gods, and more than 1,000 master gods to crush you, the Lord of all races reserve army. There is an insurmountable power gap between you and us. Admit defeat and we will give you a dignified death on account that you are the Lord of all races reserve army. Common people's regal, surrender, Origin said. Common people's regal, you don't have the slightest chance of winning the upcoming war. To you and your people, stubbornly resisting to the end is only the option of death. You were given the honorific title of common people's regal by the Supreme Will, so you must be someone who cares about the common people of the various worlds. Are you going to watch helplessly as your soldiers and god spirits die here because of your stubborn resistance? Di Huang said viciously. Zhou Feit raised his eyebrows slightly and smiled. This emperor still admires three top bloodline races' courage at this moment even though I knew that you would be desperate. Are you ready for the wrath of the Supreme Will? This emperor is the Lord of all races reserve army. Moreover, I am the Lord of all races that the Lord of all races has high hopes for. You three lords can't be compared to me. Since you dare to attack this emperor, you must be prepared to exterminate your entire clan, right? As soon as he said that, other than the heaven-cursed beast, the expressions of the living beings of the other three top bloodline races, including Di Huang in origin, changed slightly. However, their expressions became firm again. So what? The relationship between the two had long been incompatible. Since they let the common people's regal become the lord of all races, their ending would be very bad. If they surrounded and killed the common people's regal who had yet to grow up, their ending would also be very bad. Then, they would rather choose to kill the common people's regal who had yet to become the lord of all races. At least for now, this guy is still manageable. They would truly have no power to resist and the other party becomes a true lord of all races instead of a reserve army now. Common people's regal, there is no need for more talk between us. They'll just ask you one thing, will you surrender or not? Di Huang asked coldly. This emperor has lost and won, but has never surrendered. Zhou Feit said with a faint smile. Di Huang and Origin's expressions turned ugly. In the end, they still had to fight. Their current strength might have already far surpassed the common people's regal, but in their eyes, the common people's regal's strength was not weak after all. If they really fought, they would definitely lose a good portion of their soldiers and god spirits. However, there was no other way. The common people's regal must die. All soldiers and god spirits. The heaven-cursed beast said, everyone, attack and destroy all the soldiers and god spirits of the blazing sun divine kingdom. Leave no one alive. After eliminating these main combat troops, we will destroy the territory of the blazing sun divine kingdom on the high continent. When the time comes, the resources and wealth obtained from the blazing sun divine kingdom will belong to whoever obtains it. There's no need to hand it over. As soon as he said that, the eyes of all the soldiers and god spirits of the three top bloodline races instantly burned. Especially those master gods. Everyone knew that even though the blazing sun divine kingdom had only been established for a short period of time, it could be said to be extremely rich in resources. Not only did ordinary soldiers have as many skills as cabbages, even their god spirits, true gods and even master gods had a complete set of divine artifacts on them. Even a supreme god realm faction might not be able to take out such a wealth. Not to mention the three top-notch bloodline factions. Most importantly, this common people's regal also had many supreme god realm treasures in his hands. If they could obtain a supreme god realm treasure and take back their race, they could all become the ultimate treasure of their race. Origin, the heaven-cursed beast, and Di Huang looked at Zhou Feit with burning passion. Even they were shocked by the wealth of the blazing sun divine kingdom. If they could obtain all the wealth of the blazing sun divine kingdom, it would not be an exaggeration to say that the power of the three top bloodline races would increase exponentially. At the thought of this, Origin and Di Huang looked at each other and followed the army towards the eternal mothership. The heaven-cursed beast sneered when it saw this, but it did not follow. Instead, it guarded the rear and took charge of the overall situation, commanding the entire army. Kill. Show these creatures who think they're of the top bloodlines what a supreme soldier type is. Zhou Feit ordered coldly. Chapter 1441, The Battle Begins. Yes. The soldiers and god spirits of the blazing sun divine kingdom shouted in unison. They looked at the other party's capital unit's army without any fear. The enemy's military strength and the number of god spirits were indeed several times or even 10 times greater than them. However, so what? They believed that under the leadership of His Majesty, they were confident of winning even if the number of god spirits in his army was hundreds or thousands of times greater. This trust and conceit were unreasonable. However, it could also be seen how terrifying the faith the soldiers of the blazing sun divine kingdom had in Zhou. While Zhou Zhou's divine kingdom world was still empty, there were no pilgrims who had died and ascended to the heavens. That was because his believers were all in the human world. The current blazing sun divine kingdom could almost be said to be Zhou Zhou's divine kingdom on earth. Kill. Bai Yun did not say anything else. After a loud shout, she took the lead and rushed to the front, charging towards the three top bloodline races and their army of tens of thousands of elite subsidiary races. This action of a woman not inferior to a man instantly moved countless soldiers and god spirits. But then, they charged even more courageously and fearlessly. With the legion commander at the front, how could they dare to retreat? How could they retreat? In the blink of an eye, the armies of both factions collided. The battle instantly erupted. The two sides fought back and forth, flesh and blood boiling. In less than a moment, hundreds of trillions of soldiers were killed in an instant, and tens of millions of soldiers suffered light or heavy injuries. At the same time, Zhou Fight also raised his right hand and activated the 10,000 Spirit Saint. In the blink of an eye, an invisible wave spread out in all directions with his palm as the center. In the next second, a line of text appeared. Lord Talent Notification, your mythical tier, unique Lord Talent, 10,000 Spirit Saint has failed to be released due to the influence of an unknown treasure. When Zhou Fight saw the notification, he raised his eyebrows slightly before calming down. Since the other party had long known of his means, it was normal for him to be prepared before coming. In that case, he only needed to use the old method to find the item that affected his failed release. Then, he could use the Thief of Heart to steal it. However, in the current situation, there were more than 1,000 master gods, more than 300,000 true gods, 2 billion god spirits, and more than 1,000 capital units troops on the battlefield. No one knew where the three top bloodline races would hide that thing. It might even be placed on a nameless subsidiary race soldier. Under such circumstances, it was definitely unrealistic to rely on one's eyesight to find them one by one. Fortunately, Zhou Fight could cheat. He flipped his right hand and saw Bodhi Supreme appear in his hand. Bodhi Supreme, where are the things that affect my use of the 10,000 Spirit Saint? Zhou Fight asked directly. A chance to answer ordinary questions. The Bodhi Supreme said lazily. Okay. Zhou Fight said straightforwardly. He was even a little surprised. Were the questions this time so easy? It didn't even need the chance to answer the official questions. The other party's method of affecting you came from a supreme god realm treasure called the Heartless Universal Mirror. This thing is similar to Regal Soul Heaven's divine bone. It can be immune to bewitching methods at the supreme god realm and below. He comes from the original spirit race and is currently placed in the ancestral land of the original spirit race. TSK. Your Majesty, your methods seem to have been thoroughly studied. The Bodhi Supreme teased. It was actually placed in the ancestral land of the original spirit race. Zhou Fight was a little surprised. Then, he heard Bodhi Supreme's words. It's just a 10,000 Spirit Saint. If it can't use it, so be it. It's not to the extent of being studied thoroughly. I have a lot of tricks up my sleeve. Zhou Fight said calmly. In the end, the 10,000 Spirit Saint was just a master god tier technique. However, because it came from the Lord's law, it looked more powerful. However, now that Zhou Zhou even had supreme god realm techniques, he naturally did not care much about one or two master god tier lord talents losing their effectiveness. Just as well. If you can't use it, then don't use it. I'm going to the ultimate void battlefield today. I'll let the soldiers under my command increase their strength by conquering and eliminating the soldiers and god spirits of the three top bloodline races and vassal races. That way, I'll feel more at ease before I go. Zhou Fight muttered to himself. Bodhi Supreme looked at his confident and indifferent expression and could not help but purse its lips. This guy, he could easily face most dangers as he continued to become stronger. He was no longer the new lord who would ask it about everything. He grew up so quickly. Perhaps this guy could really defeat the three lords of all races and become a true lord of all races. Bodhi Supreme sighed. On the battlefield, at the beginning of the battle between the soldiers and god spirits on both sides, the three top-notch bloodline races relied on the advantage of having 10 times the military strength of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom to occupy an absolute disadvantage on the battlefield. The leaders of the three top bloodline races and some of the elite subsidiary races who did not participate in the battle smiled when they saw this scene. However, after that, they seemed to have discovered something, and their faces were filled with shock. What's going on? Why are the soldiers and god spirits of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom like Wuxia? Why are they so hard to chew? We have 10 times the number of god spirits than the other party. Why is there no effect at all when such a large number of god spirits directly attack? Not many of their soldiers and god spirits died, but our soldiers and god spirits suffered heavy losses. Could it be that the soldiers and god spirits of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom are all possessed by gods? The leaders of these races were stunned. His heart was filled with confusion and doubt. This was not what they had expected. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's 210-odd capital units army, more than 240,000 god spirits, 33,000 true gods, and 129 master gods were guarding one place. The Supreme God Realm soldiers stood at the outermost edge to defend against the attacks of the enemies from all directions. The Holy God Realm soldiers used all kinds of supreme divine techniques behind the Supreme God Realm soldiers to kill these incoming enemies. At the same time, space battleships flew out from the Eternal Mothership in the center. Together with the mechanical Elven, they used all kinds of high-tech weapons to counter the attack from the enemy battleships. There was also a life ark beside the Eternal Mothership. A large number of clergymen flew out of the life ark to treat or revive the injured or dead soldiers and god spirits of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. The battle could be said to be abnormally intense. However, in such an intense battle situation, not long after, the attentive god spirits discovered that the soldiers and god spirits of the three top bloodline races had clearly died and injured more than 500 trillion soldiers. However, the number of casualties among the soldiers and god spirits of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom had not exceeded 2,000 trillion. Furthermore, even the 2,000 trillion soldiers quickly recovered under the treatment of the life ark clergymen and rushed to the battlefield again. It won't take long for these soldiers, which numbered less than 2,000 trillion, would probably all be revived and be able to enter the battlefield again. The most ridiculous thing was that they did not even have their own resurrection ability. It could be seen that they were completely at ease with the current battlefield. There was no nervousness or despair at all. The god spirits of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom were already used to such a scene. Wasn't it just death? They were already used to death. The leaders of the three top bloodline races were stunned. They had long known from the information that the soldiers and god spirits of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom had the ability to revive. However, they did not expect it to be so ridiculous. It turned out that everyone had been resurrected. They thought that they could only be partially revived, and there was a price to pay for revival. However, from the looks of it, not only could the other party revive all of them, but they also did not seem to have paid much of a price to revive. Their soldier types are wrong. It's different from the soldier type we knew before. At this moment, Origin realized that something was wrong and pointed at the soldiers of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Chapter 1442, Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord. Editor Atlas Studios, Soldier Type. The Heaven Curse Beast and Di Huang hurriedly looked over. Then, they saw that 2/3 of the 200-odd capital units Divine Kingdom army had turned into two new soldier types that they were completely unfamiliar with. Moreover, the combat strength of these two new soldier types was so strong that even as the leaders of the top bloodline factions, they were shocked. What kind of soldier type is this? Why do I feel that it's even stronger than our Divine Kingdom soldier type? Origin asked in shock. The Heaven Curse Beast and Di Huang also had solemn expressions. As a top bloodline race faction, they naturally had Divine Kingdom soldier types in their race. Moreover, there were more than one or two Divine Kingdom soldier types. However, after comparing, they suddenly realized that even the top Divine Kingdom soldier types in their race, which were ranked in the top 3 among the myriad races in the world, were far inferior to the 2 mysterious soldier types of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. However, how was this possible? This soldier under the Lord of all races couldn't be a supreme soldier type, right? This thought flashed through their minds before they abandoned it. What a joke! A supreme soldier type. Even supreme forces did not have many of such soldier types. Even if there was such a cultivation method for supreme soldiers, the price of cultivation was also very high. Therefore, ordinary supreme forces did not have many supreme soldiers. Most of them were Divine Kingdom soldiers mixed with a small number of supreme soldiers to form their army. Only those top supreme forces would nurture a large number of supreme soldier types and use them as their main combat force. If it's not a supreme soldier type, then what is it? Origin and the others were puzzled. Especially when they couldn't discover the information of this soldier type, the doubts in their hearts deepened. Another 2 hours passed and the war was still ongoing in the Chaos Sea. However, the army of more than 1,000 capital units from the 3 top bloodline races had been reduced to more than 800 capital units. 2 billion god spirits were reduced to 1.8 billion god spirits. 50,000 of the 300,000 true gods had died and only 250,000 true gods were left. The 1,000-odd master gods had become more than 800. As for the army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, they had only lost more than 10 capital unit soldiers, more than 10 million god spirits, more than 3,000 true gods, and 12 master gods. Moreover, these fallen soldiers and god spirits were reviving under the resurrection of the Life Ark's resurrection altar and the clergyman. Then, they rushed to the battlefield again. Which meant the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom had not lost much. They had only lost some resurrection resources. As for the 3 top bloodline factions, they could be said to have suffered heavy losses. Origin, the Heaven Curse Beast, Di Huang, and the other subsidiary race leaders' faces were as black as the bottom of a pot when they saw this scene. At the same time, they found it unbelievable. Supreme soldier type. Origin gritted his teeth. A soldier type with such a gap in strength is definitely a supreme soldier type. Otherwise, our Divine Kingdom soldier type would definitely not be so powerless. And it's not an ordinary supreme soldier type. Di Huang said faintly, I once went to the land of despair. The withered heart under that will of despair is also a supreme soldier type. However, in terms of combat strength, they might be able to barely fight in a one-on-one battle. However, if it's a battlefield that tests teamwork, the withered heart might not be able to compare to the supreme soldier type of this Lord of all races. That shouldn't be the case. How did he obtain a supreme soldier type? This kind of supreme soldier type can only be possessed by supreme god realm factions or even willpower factions. Moreover, it's completely sealed to us. How did he, a lord who has just arrived in the high continent, obtain a soldier type of this level? Origin felt that it was very unbelievable. If supreme soldier types were so easy to obtain, they would have long owned them as the top race faction that had operated the supreme great cosmos for countless years. It doesn't matter where he got his supreme soldier type. The most important thing now is how to destroy the other party. Di Huang's voice was solemn. At this rate, even if our forces are exhausted, it will be difficult to destroy the other party. On the other hand, the soldiers and god spirits we brought might be exhausted by the other party. At this point, he suddenly turned to look at the Heaven Curse Beast and questioned, Heaven Curse Beast, when will the Lord you mentioned come? How am I supposed to know that? The heaven curse beast said coldly, that Lord will come whenever he wants. Origin frowned slightly. Another 3 hours passed, on the battlefield. The ordinary soldiers of the 3 top bloodline races had already decreased from more than 800 to 500 capital units. 8 billion god spirits were reduced to 2 billion god spirits. Another 250,000 true gods perished, turning into 150,000 true gods. More than 800 master gods had become more than 600 master gods. As for the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom side, due to the weakening of the enemy's forces, their counterattack became much easier. The resurrection work also became much easier. As a result, the soldiers of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom were almost full. When Origin and the other race leaders saw this scene, their expressions were extremely ugly. They had still underestimated the strength of the supreme soldier types under the Lord of the Blazing Sun. The strength of these 2 supreme soldier types was too terrifying. It was simply 10 streets ahead of the Divine Kingdom soldier types under them. At this rate, in the end, they would definitely lose, and they would lose very badly. Almost all of them would be destroyed. At that time, the risky actions that they thought were worth it would become the laughing stock of all races in the world and a stepping stone for the common people's regal's prestige to increase. When will that Lord arrive? Origin gritted his teeth and questioned again. He could not bear to see his race's heritage being exhausted in front of him. If they did nothing, even if they won in the end, they would probably fall below the top races and become ordinary high-level races. I told you. That Lord will come whenever he wants. The heaven curse beast said coldly. You. Origin was furious. At this moment, a satisfied and frivolous voice sounded. Not bad. This divine being will be here when I arrive. Leave the rest to me. Till leave the rest to you after I kill that so-called Lord of all races reserve army. Don't forget the rest. Origin, heaven curse beast, and Di Huang's divine bodies trembled. Then, the heaven curse beast hurriedly said respectfully, Greetings, Supreme God Realm Shadow Lord. We've already prepared the rest of the remuneration. Please rest assured, Your Excellency. Okay. I'm going. This Supreme God Shadow Lord had been missing since he spoke. Even after he left, the gods present did not discover where he was. Supreme God Shadow Lord. Shadow Lord, Origin muttered to himself, as if he was thinking about this familiar name. A few seconds later, his expression changed drastically. Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord. You hired a Scarlet Supreme God to deal with the Lord of all races reserve army? Are you crazy? Chapter 1443, Attack. The Origin looked at the heaven curse beast, its angry eyes mixed with a trace of fear. It was already rebellious enough for the clans to besiege the Lord of all races reserve army. However, from the perspective of the Supreme Will, this rebellion might also be a test for the Lord of all races reserve army. From this perspective, the Supreme Will might punish them less later, or at least leave them with a chance of survival. However, the nature would be completely different if they colluded with the Crimson Overlord Supreme God to attack the Lord of all races reserve army, because this was the act of a traitor colluding with foreign enemies. In a war between two sides, traitors were actually the most hateful. If the Supreme Will found out later, they would definitely not have the slightest chance of survival. The Supreme Will would definitely not let them off. At the thought of this, Origin felt like he was about to fall into despair. He only wanted to get rid of the common people's regal and use such a risky method to allow he to lead his race and not be eliminated by the other party when they grew up. This was timely. There was no need for the other party to grow up. The Supreme Will would personally eliminate them when he sensed betrayal. So what if they were a top-notch bloodline faction? So what if he was number one? The Supreme Will would be very ruthless if he really wanted to be. At this moment, Di Huang also realized this and looked at the Heaven Curse Beast in fear and anger. Heaven Curse Beast. What do you mean? Our intention isn't to make the Supreme Will think that we've betrayed him. You're putting us all in a desperate situation. He grabbed the Heaven Curse Beast's neck with one hand and stared at it with bloodshot eyes. If you don't give me an answer today, they'll drag you down with me even if I die today. He was already extremely angry. When the Heaven Curse Beast heard this, it looked at the two top-notch bloodline patriarchs whose expressions changed drastically. The cold expression on its face suddenly disappeared and it revealed a strange smile. So what if I want you to betray the Supreme Will? Now that the arrow is already on the bow, it has to be fired. You've already created the fact that you've colluded with the Scarlet faction to surround and attack the Lord of all Races Reserve Army. You will be regarded as traitors by the Supreme Will regardless of whether this action succeeds or not. Why don't you listen to my advice? Leave the Supreme Will and join Lord Crimson Overlord's camp. Your current actions can be said to be the best proof of allegiance to the Crimson Overlord. Ha 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 ha, the Heaven Curse Beast laughed crazily and looked at Origin and Di Huang with mocking eyes. Aw! The chaotic god race patriarch directly punched the white-haired head of the Heaven Curse Beast. However, in the next second, the Heaven Curse Beast immediately regenerated a new head and still looked at him with a mocking smile. You're a spy of the Crimson Overlord? Origin asked coldly. No. Then why did you frame us like this? Because this will cause trouble for the Supreme Will, ha 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 ha. The Heaven Curse Beast's smile became even more arrogant. Origin and Di Huang stared at the Heaven Curse Beast. At this moment, the two deities deeply understood why the other party was called the Heaven Curse Beast. Perhaps it was not because the other party's talent made the heavens jealous that they cursed it. It was a scourge in the myriad worlds. The heavens had placed a curse to restrict them in order to prevent this scourge from causing trouble. As for the other party's idea of betraying the Supreme Will and joining the Crimson Overlord's camp, Origin and Di Huang denied it without thinking. They were a top-notch bloodline race under the Supreme Will. They were too involved with the Supreme Will and could not be separated at all. In addition, their racial foundation was in the Supreme Great Cosmos. They could not abandon their racial foundation to join the Crimson Overlord. At this moment, the Heaven Curse Beast's arrogant expression changed slightly as it looked at the battlefield below in disbelief. Origin and Di Huang were stunned when they saw this. Then, they thought of something and suddenly turned to look at the battlefield. A few minutes ago, just as the Shadow Lord Scarlet Supreme God arrived at the battlefield, Zhou Battle's god physique suddenly trembled, and an extremely terrifying sense of danger arose in his heart. He had the Supreme Sacred Body and his main body had various mystical abilities. For example, a sixth sense like danger could almost be considered a revelation of fate. Therefore, he completely believed that the sudden sense of danger in his heart was not groundless, but that a true crisis that involved him was about to happen. Furthermore, from the intensity of this sense of danger, it was an extremely shocking danger. It was very likely that he would die in this crisis if he did not handle it well. Could the other party be using a Supreme God Realm method? That's not right. If it's just a Supreme God Realm technique, I also have a Supreme God Realm treasure on me. I'm confident that I'm not much inferior to the other party. It shouldn't give me such a strong sense of danger. If it's a Supreme Divine Artifact, even though the possibility is relatively small, I also have a Supreme Divine Artifact, and I have many of them. There's no need to be afraid. Then there's only one possibility. Zhou Fight took a deep breath and guessed the truth almost instantly. The other party invited a Supreme God Realm expert, and a very powerful one. He muttered to himself with a calm expression. They invited the Supreme God Realm. They're really generous. However, there's actually a Supreme God Realm who dares to interfere in the war between me and the myriad races. Aren't they afraid of attracting the punishment of the Supreme Will? Zhou Fight was puzzled. However, then, there was no time to think. A powerful enemy was in front. He couldn't think of such useless things. While his expression did not change, he silently let himself, Joe Marshall, Joe Win, and Saturday change into the Heavenly Wall Divine Armor, the Great Heaven Seal, and the other 4 newly obtained Grade 1 Supreme Divine Artifacts. At the same time, he activated King and raised his strength to a level infinitely close to the Supreme God realm. Another black-robed statue of a deity holding a black saber appeared in his hand. It was the Grade 3 Supreme God Realm Heavenly Blade Supreme God Realm Puppet. Holding this Grade 3 Supreme God Realm Puppet in his hand, Zhou Fight felt much more relaxed. However, his mental will was still highly focused, vigilant of everything around him. At this moment, a terrifying willpower impact erupted from a certain spot, instantly impacting his soul and will. Even though Zhou Fight was wearing a Grade 2 Supreme Divine Artifact, the Heavenly Wall Divine Armor, and could withstand a certain amount of willpower attacks, he was still struck until he fell into a daze. A surprised grunt sounded. Then, black light condensed in the air and quickly condensed into a black dagger. This dagger emitted the power of the Law of Shadow and the Law of Instant Death. Its power was so terrifying that even a top Supreme God Realm expert would be shocked. The moment such a dagger appeared, it stabbed straight at the divine spark between Zhou Fight's eyebrows. Chapter 1444, Battle of the Supreme God Realm. If this stab was solid, not only would Zhou Fight die on the spot, even Zhou's avatars, including Zhou Win, Zhou Marshall, Zhou Manage, and even Zhou's main body, were affected by the power of the instant death laws above and died. At this moment, Zhou Marshall, who had been staying in the Eternal Mothership, quickly took out the Heavenly Blade Supreme God Realm Puppet and activated it with the Supreme God Realm in the Grade 3 Supreme God Realm Divine Crystals. In the next second, the palm-sized black-robed Saberman puppet suddenly moved from death and waved the black saber in its hand. Swoosh! A shocking black saber beam lit up. The entire Chaos Sea's chaotic chi and chaotic divine lightning were split into 2 by this peerless saber and could not recover for a long time. As for the black dagger that ambushed Zhou Fight, it was also sent flying by the black saber beam and landed in the hand of a god dressed in a blood-colored emperor's robe and covered in shadow airflow. Only his eyes were scarlet. He looked ordinary and did not even have the aura of a god spirit. Even the weakest low-tier deity-level elementary grade god spirit looked more threatening than him. However, the danger felt in Zhou Fight's heart instantly increased by 10 times the moment his gaze landed on him. Dangerous. Extremely dangerous. His intuition was warning him crazily. Zhou Fight's expression turned solemn. Even he, who held a Grade 3 Supreme God Realm puppet, felt that it was dangerous. How terrifying was this guy's strength? Grade 3 Supreme God Realm? Or an even stronger Grade 4 Supreme God Realm? At this moment, he suddenly realized that there was definitely a scarlet aura on the other party that could not be mistaken. He was even stunned for a second before saying, "Scarlet Supreme God Realm?" He looked in the direction of Origin and the others in disbelief. They actually got a Scarlet Supreme God Realm expert to deal with him. Did they not want to follow the Supreme Will anymore? On the other side, Infinite Saber Radiance. Heavenly Blade Supreme God Realm. The Scarlet Supreme God Realm Shadow Lord played with the black dagger in his hand and muttered to himself in surprise. Then, he laughed. Is this the trump card the Supreme Will left for you to protect yourself? Not bad, not bad. The Supreme Will is really protective of his new Lord of all races reserve army. He actually gave a treasure of this level to this little fellow. A little guy who's not even a master god actually has a Grade 3 Supreme God Realm expert protecting him. TSK. If the other Lord of our race's reserve army know, they will definitely be resentful, right? He laughed twice before his expression became calm again. So what if it's the puppet of the Heavenly Blade Supreme God Realm? Today, the true bodies of the Heavenly Blade Supreme God Realm and the Heavenly Sword Supreme God Realm are here. I want to kill this scarlet natural enemy with my own hands. Otherwise, my 100% kill rate will be broken. The Supreme God Realm Shadow Lord saw a black-robed puppet holding a saber grow larger and larger until it was the size of him. Heavenly Blade Supreme God Realm, are you sure you want to stop me? The Shadow Lord sized up the Heavenly Blade Supreme God Realm with ill intentions. He had used the law of shadow and the law of instant death to become a Supreme God Realm Venerable. In the early years, he had also earned the title of Shadow Killer Regal. Even though the Heavenly Blade Supreme God Realm was only a puppet, under his instant death law, he could completely kill the Heavenly Blade Supreme God Realm's main body after killing the puppet. Such a method that involved the main body was one of the consummate techniques that he relied on to become famous. The Heavenly Blade Supreme God Realm had naturally heard of this Shadow Lord's name, but he only said calmly, "You think you can kill me?" The Supreme God Shadow Lord could not help but be stunned. He was a Grade 4 Supreme God Realm and the other party was only a Grade 3 Supreme God Realm. Even though the other party had battle records of defeating a Grade 4 Supreme God Realm expert, it was only a few times. Did this guy think that he was really invincible? You people who play with weapons pay attention to the obsession of invincibility in the heavens every day. The red light in the eyes of the Shadow Lord Supreme God shone brightly. However, you also have to know that this obsession can achieve you and kill you. Swoosh! A red light pierced through space. In the next second, Zhou Fight and the others were shocked to discover that the head of the Heavenly Blade Supreme God had disappeared, leaving only a headless corpse. Not far away, the Shadow Lord played with the black dagger in his right hand and held the head of the Heavenly Blade Supreme God in his left hand, looking casual and indifferent. I'm one of the top 3 Supreme Gods under Lord Crimson Overlord. I've killed 16 Grade 4 Supreme Gods. There are more than 100 Grade 4 Supreme Gods. You're just a small Grade 3 Supreme God Realm. Don't tell me you think you can defeat me just because you've defeated a Grade 4 Supreme Gods. I'll kill you. Like a pig being slaughtered. Towards the end, the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord exuded an incomparably terrifying killing intent. The killing intent was so dense that it even formed a killing intent domain that was comparable to the boundless universe around him. Zhou Fight felt a chill in his heart. This guy. The number of life forms killed was actually enough to fill the entire boundless universe. No. It is probably more than that. Even Zhou, who had many legacies, had never heard of such a number of killings. He looked at the Heavenly Blade Supreme God. He could feel it. After the other party lost his head, his divine Bodhis vitality, soul aura, and even the power of his will were rapidly weakening. Before long, this puppet of the Heavenly Blade Supreme God would completely die. Zhou Fight frowned deeply, not expecting this. The Grade 3 Supreme God Realm puppet that he regarded as his strongest trump card was actually defeated in one strike by this Scarlet Supreme God Realm Shadow Lord. What should I do now? Zhou Fight thought to himself. It was definitely impossible to use his status as a reserve member of the Lord of all races and the Supreme Holy Sword to order the other party. The other party was under the command of the Crimson Overlord and not the Supreme Will after all. He could not control the other party at all. However, I have many supreme divine artifacts. In addition to my will that has just entered the will divine transformation realm. Attack, defense, and willpower have barely stepped into the supreme god level. In addition, I also have a large number of supreme god level treasures. Among those supreme god level treasures, there's no lack of grade 3 and grade 4 supreme god level treasures. With they on me, I should be able to deal with this Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord. Zhou Fight thought. Heavenly fate Di Huang had allowed him to now possess a large number of supreme god-level treasures and supreme divine artifacts. With the vast amount of chaotic sacred power at the level of a top master god, he could still control them. Only then did Zhou Feit realize that he was almost no different from a true supreme god. In fact, many supreme gods might not even be his match in terms of various methods. At the thought of this, Zhou Feit relaxed a little. Strength could calm people down. At this moment, a sudden change occurred. The heavenly blade supreme god's headless body, which was stiff and motionless, suddenly trembled slightly. Then, he raised the silver saber in his hand and slashed at the supreme god. Grade 3 Supreme God Realm Law Skill Heaven Destruction Dao. Chapter 1445, Shock Caused by 6 Supreme God Divine Artifacts. Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord did not expect that a puppet that was about to die could still attack him before it died. Coupled with the fact that the Heaven Extermination Dao's Law skill attacked him when he was caught off guard, he couldn't dodge in time and was directly struck by this move, splitting his body in half. However, the two halves of his divine body quickly dispersed into a large number of shadow airflows. Then, these shadow airflows gathered together again, forming a complete Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord. At this moment, this Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord was staring fixedly at the headless Heavenly Blade Supreme God. He could sense that the aura of the Law of Sword on the other party's body was even richer and sharper, far surpassing the previous him, who was even comparable to a Grade 4 Supreme God. What a good move! The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord said coldly. The situation was actually very bad even though his divine body seemed to have recovered. Under the attack of the heaven-destroying Tao, the laws in his body were extremely chaotic, as if he would collapse and disintegrate in the next second. If he hadn't used his tyrannical strength to forcefully suppress the chaotic laws, he would have felt that his divine body, divine spark, and even his will would have disintegrated. These people are focused on playing with weapons. It's fine if you don't make a move, but once you make a move, you want to kill someone. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord frowned. Actually, he could be considered to be a weapon user as a supreme god who used daggers. However, he was not a supreme god who followed the path of dagger stabbing, but a supreme god who specialized in studying shadows and assassination. He was no longer the top assassin who believed in weapons. He took a deep breath before his expression turned indifferent again. The god of death. Since you still have the strength to fight, then he'll play with you again. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord hit again and disappeared without a trace. The Heavenly Blade Supreme God waited silently with his saber. Taking the initiative to attack would easily expose his flaws, so it was better to deal with the changes without changing. The other party was an assassin and would take the initiative to attack. He could still hold on in this state for a long time. He wasn't afraid that he would stall for time until he died completely. Haha. The Heaven Curse Beast laughed when it saw this scene. So our Lord of all Races Reserve Army has such a Grade 3 Supreme God Realm puppet as his trump card. What a pity. What a pity. This Grade 3 Supreme God Realm puppet is not bad. But what can we do? The one we invited is the infamous Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord, even among the Fourth Order Supreme Gods. Lord Crimson Overlord said that the other party has the willpower. Lord Crimson Overlord said that the other party has the willpower. In the end, it's just death. And when this puppet dies, it will be the death of that common people's regal. At this point, the Heaven Curse Beast looked at Origin and Di Huang beside it with a faint smile. Origin, Di Huang. Why aren't you laughing? Isn't that what you want to see? After the common people's regal dies, want the greatest unstable factor affecting the status of our top bloodline race disappear? Isn't this something to be happy about, ha ha ha? The heaven curse beast laughed wildly. Origin and Di Huang's expressions were extremely ugly. They also wanted to be happy. However, they could not be happy when they saw the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord. Just thinking about the revenge of the Supreme will made them shudder. At the thought of this, the two of them looked at each other with determination in their eyes. Just as they were about to do something, they suddenly felt something and looked in Zhou Fight's direction in shock. Your Excellency! Receive the divine artifact! Zhou Fight shouted. 6 divine artifacts that emitted supreme fluctuations floated in front of him. Armor, combat boots, helmet, talismans, weapons, accessories. There was everything. Among them were Grade 1 Supreme God Divine Artifacts and 2 Grade 2 Supreme God Divine Artifacts. As for that saber, it was a genuine Grade 3 Supreme God Realm Divine Artifact. These Supreme Divine Artifacts were dropped by the Master Gods his subordinates had killed in the past 2 days. That was because the Master God tier Divine Artifacts were rare and not many Supreme Divine Artifacts dropped. They could only barely gather this set of scattered Supreme Divine Artifacts. If he could gather a full set of Grade 3 Supreme Divine Artifacts, the strength of the Heavenly Blade Supreme God would at least double. In addition, the Heavenly Blade Supreme God was injured too quickly. It was so fast that Zhou Fight did not even have time to react. He used a spatial transfer technique and directly sent this set of Supreme God Divine Artifacts to the Heavenly Blade Supreme God. At this moment, the headless Heavenly Blade Supreme God was stunned for a second. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord, who was hiding in the dark, was also stunned when he saw the 6 genuine Supreme God Divine Artifacts. Are those Supreme God Divine Artifacts? The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord was in disbelief. He only had 2 Supreme God Divine Artifacts as a top Supreme God. The Heavenly Blade Supreme God had outstanding battle records among Supreme Gods. He was known as the #1 saber expert among Supreme Gods, but he only had a saber of a Grade 2 Supreme God Divine Artifact. Even so, it made countless Supreme Gods envious. This was because most Supreme Gods did not even have a single Supreme God Divine Artifact in their hands. Most of them only used Master God tier Divine Artifacts. This is going to be difficult. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord watched as the Heavenly Blade Supreme God calmly received these 6 Supreme God Divine Artifacts and put them on. The power on his body visibly increased by a large margin, and the aura on his body was almost 6 to 7 times stronger. Even though I don't know where this Lord of all races reserve comes from to have so many Supreme God Divine Artifacts, with the enhancement of the 6 Supreme God Divine Artifacts, the strength of the Heavenly Blade Supreme God is probably not inferior to mine at all. It might even be stronger than me. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord's expression was solemn. The enhancement of a Supreme Divine Artifact on a Supreme God could directly double the combat power of an ordinary Supreme God. Let alone 6 Supreme Divine Artifacts. However, he still had a high chance of defeating the Heavenly Blade Supreme God. This was because the path of assassination was the path of the weak defeating the strong. Even if the other party had 6 Supreme God Divine Artifacts on him, he was confident that he could successfully assassinate him. In addition, the gains from this war are amazing. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord was a little excited. 6 Supreme Divine Artifacts. His gains over the past countless years added up to less than this. When I obtain the Supreme Divine Artifact on this guy, no, this Lord of all races might have even more Supreme Divine Artifacts on him. At that time, my strength will definitely improve and even become the #1 assassin god among the Supreme Gods. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord thought. Then, he stopped thinking and his gaze landed on the Heavenly Blade Supreme God. He did not get carried away even when he was greedy. Now that the other party's aura was at its peak, it was not appropriate to rush up and fight him head-on. However, at this moment, I found you. The Heavenly Blade Supreme God spoke for the first time. Chapter 1446, Grade 4 Supreme God Law Skill, Shadow's Lifebreaker. Then, he suddenly brandished his saber and slashed at the void. The saber was extremely sharp and even broke through the extreme sharpness of the saber, cutting through various laws and reaching the limitless realm. It was one of the strongest blade skills of the Heavenly Blade Supreme God Limitless Heavenly Blade. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord, who was hiding in the void, was shocked. His most confident obscure law skill had actually been discovered. How is this possible? He had never been discovered, even when he assassinated a Grade 4 Supreme God in the past. This Heavenly Blade Supreme God, a Grade 3 Supreme God realm, could actually discover him. Why? Could his perception have increased to such a terrifying level with the enhancement of the 6 Supreme God Divine artifacts? It was already too late for him to dodge the other party's attack. He could only use his Shadow Divine body to the greatest extent to weaken the other party's attack. Swoosh! His Shadow Divine body was slashed into two with a slash. The Heavenly Blade Supreme God did not give in and rushed over, wanting to kill the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord completely. The shadow airflow on the body of the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord that had been split into two surged and actually turned into two Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lords. Furthermore, the aura on their bodies did not weaken at all. The two of them held black daggers and disappeared into the void at the same time. The Heavenly Blade Supreme God stood where she was. After 2 seconds of silence, she suddenly slashed out 2 powerful saber beams at 2 different places. Grade 3 Supreme God Realm Law Skill Immeasurable Saber Light. Under the attack of this powerful saber light, the space was directly cut off, revealing 2 shadows behind the space. 2 sharp whistles sounded. These 2 shadows were directly cut into pieces by the endless saber light. Then, these shattered shadows turned into countless shadow airflows, forming more than 300 Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lords. I've long cultivated the sacred Shadow Supreme Indestructible Body. You can't kill me. Hundreds of Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lords said in unison. All the soldiers, generals, and God spirits present felt a huge pressure from these Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lords. This Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord was indeed a top Supreme God. His strength was indeed unfathomable. In the next second, the more than 300 Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lords held daggers in unison and attacked the Heavenly Blade Supreme God. The Heavenly Blade Supreme God, who was among the hundreds of Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord clones, did not panic at all. He waved the newly obtained Grade 3 Supreme God Realm Divine Weapon M his hand and wantonly scattered resplendent saber beams. These saber beams actually blocked the attacks of more than 300 Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord clones, shocking the God spirits present. Is this still a Grade 3 Supreme God Realm? How could a God forcefully block the joint attack of more than 300 Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord clones? But then again, this Grade 3 Supreme God Realm Heavenly Blade Supreme God Saber technique had really reached the peak of one of the Saber Dao. Every slash that he brandished seemed to be art. It was precise, powerful, and fatal. It could actually perfectly defend against the attacks of every Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord clone. It dazzled them. And only the Heavenly Blade Supreme God knew that these 300 or so Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lords were indeed terrifying. However, their strength had actually been diluted. On average, each Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord clone only had the strength of a Grade 1 Supreme God. If he were to face the full-strength assassination of the Grade 4 Supreme God Shadow Lord at his peak, he might feel some pressure. But what if he were to face the combined attack of more than 300 Grade 1 Supreme Gods? I'm sorry. A numerical siege is completely meaningless to me. Your attacks, be it speed, strength, concealment, or lethality, are as weak as chickens to me. He could deal with them calmly no matter how many there was no pressure on him. This was the confidence of a blade expert who was good at mowing grass. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord also realized this. He retracted all his clones without changing his expression, restoring his strength to that of a grade 4 Supreme God. However, because he had taken 3 of the other party's attacks head-on, he could sense that his divine body had been greatly weakened by the power of the other party's Sword Dao laws. The current he was about 20% weaker than when he was at his peak. You forced me to this extent with just a puppet. You can be proud even with the enhancement of a supreme divine artifact. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord said calmly. However, his expression turned cold. But next, you will definitely die under my famous technique. Come and witness your death. Before you die, remember this name. Grade 4 Supreme God Law Skill Shadow's Life Break. The next second. The shadow behind the Heavenly Blade Supreme God suddenly came to life and gently hugged the Heavenly Blade Supreme God puppet from behind. Then, a vortex appeared under his feet, and the Heavenly Blade Supreme God puppet was dragged under the vortex and disappeared. Zhou Fight raised his eyebrows slightly. He sensed the other party's location and quickly realized that the other party had come to a familiar place. The Shadow World. With a thought, Zhou disappeared. Then where did the common people's regal go? When Origin saw this, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. There's a high chance that he has gone to find the missing Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade. However, with his strength, even if he finds him, it's very difficult for him to help the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade. Di Huang said in a deep voice. The 2 god spirits looked at each other and suddenly attacked the Heaven Curse Beast. The Heaven Curse Beast seemed to have expected this and retreated, avoiding the attacks of the 2 god spirits. It seems like you're still unwilling to betray the Supreme Will. The Heaven Curse Beast said indifferently. I'm waiting for death to be loyal to the Great Supreme Will. How can I betray the Great Supreme Will just because of a few words from you? On the other hand, you colluded with the Scarlet Supreme God and harmed the Lord of all Races Reserve. We will definitely capture you and save the Lord of all Races Reserve. We will send you to the Lord of all Races to be punished. Even though we previously held a grudge against the Lord of all Races, in the face of a major problem like the Scarlet Forces, we will put down the grudge in our hearts for the sake of justice and resist foreign enemies like you together. Don't even think about fulfilling your wishful thinking. The 2 god spirits said righteously. Hypocrites. You make it sound so dignified. Isn't it just that there aren't enough bargaining chips for betrayal? I don't believe that the 2 of you will still stay by the Supreme Will's side and not run when the bargaining chip for betrayal is big enough. The Heaven Curse Beast sneered. The 2 god spirits did not speak and used their full strength to charge at the Heaven Curse Beast. The Heaven Curse Beast smiled sinisterly. Just as well. It's been more than 1,000,000 years since we fought. Let me see if your strength has improved after 1,000,000 years. He shouted loudly. Then, the 3 god spirits instantly fought. When the army of the top bloodline factions on the battlefield saw this scene, they were immediately stunned. The battlefield became a little chaotic. When the army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom saw this, they naturally would not let go of such a good opportunity. They immediately attacked these people of foreign races with all their might. In the blink of an eye, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom had the advantage on the battlefield. Chapter 1447, The Shadow World in the Shadow Realm. Zhou Fight saw a scene that shocked him when he arrived. At this moment, a black divine pillar appeared out of thin air in the Shadow World. A god spirit was tied to this black divine pillar. This god spirit was none other than the supreme god of the Heavenly Blade puppet. At that moment, he was tightly tied to the shadow pillar. No matter how he struggled, he was unable to escape the restraints of the black shadow pillar. Outside the shadow pillar, countless shadow world life forms were kneeling on the ground and kowtowing to this black shadow pillar with extreme respect. Zhou Feit scanned the entire shadow world with his divine consciousness and realized that all the living beings in the shadow world were kneeling on the ground and worshipping. This was the entire shadow world. Due to the special nature of the shadow world, it was a shadow of various worlds. Therefore, its territory was very large, almost the size of the total territory of tens of thousands of boundless universes combined. At this moment, all the living beings in the shadow world were actually worshipping this black shadow pillar. It could be seen how shocking and spectacular the scene was. However, after the shock, Zhou Feit felt a chill run down his spine. That was because the scene in front of them was no longer something a supreme god could do. Only a will-level existence could create such a method. He looked at the supreme god of the heavenly blade, who was bound to the shadow pillar and could not move, and then looked around. Soon, he saw the scarlet supreme god Shadow Lord, who was quietly watching the supreme god of the heavenly blade not far away, as if he was watching a good show that was about to be released. This scarlet supreme god Shadow Lord actually grasped a will-level technique. Zhou Feit muttered to himself and cursed in his heart. **T. What is going on with the supreme will? The 3 top bloodline races have joined forces to target me. It's fine if you don't help me. The scarlet supreme god Shadow Lord attacked me. I can also not say anything even if you don't help me. I also have supreme god-level methods in my hands after all. I can still think that you're testing my ability. However, this was an absolute willpower level technique. This was a willpower level technique. No supreme god could resist it. You're using it to test the Lord of all races reserve army under you who isn't even a master god. Wasn't he this equivalent to asking wandering tyrant to beat up Sun Wukong? Zhou Feit racked his brains to think of a way to break out of this situation. The supreme god of the heavenly blade must be saved. He was the strongest trump card in his hands, and it was also the most suitable choice to resist the scarlet supreme god Shadow Lord. If he lost, he would have to deal with the scarlet supreme god Shadow Lord with his other clones. Even though he had the help of the supreme divine artifact and had a certain confidence in dealing with the scarlet supreme god Shadow Lord, he was not 100% confident. There was still a certain risk for him to fight the other party. It was good that he was a warlike clone. But that didn't mean that he would put him in danger without considering any risks. If he wasn't a warrior, then he would be a coward. The Supreme Will must be observing me. It's impossible for him to watch me fall into an irresistible danger and do nothing. There must be a way out. And the way out is in my hands. What's the way out? Zhou Feit muttered to himself. He thought as he wore the skin of Godillos to prevent himself from being discovered by the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord. At this moment, he suddenly felt an unimaginably terrifying will pressure descend on the shadow world. Under this pressure, Zhou Feit felt like an ant. The other party could easily kill him with a thought. A supreme will has descended. Zhou Feit instantly realized this. Only the Supreme Will realm could make him, a Will Divine Transformation realm expert, feel completely unable to resist. The only person who can appear in the shadow world is the will of the shadow world. Wait, Zhou Feit suddenly realized something. He looked at the shadow world in front of him. A black shadow pillar that reached all the way to the sky. The supreme god of the heavenly blade puppet tied to the shadow pillar. The scarlet supreme god Shadow Lord who was watching the show. The fanatical and respectful life form of the shadow world. And the sudden descent of the will of shadow. Could it be? Zhou Feit connected everything together and suddenly had a bold guess in his heart. At this moment, the high and mighty Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord suddenly bowed to the sky and said in the willpower language that only a willpower realm expert who cultivated willpower could understand, "Teacher. I'm not your teacher. I've only given you some pointers before." The Will of Shadow said. "Regardless of whether you acknowledge me or not, you've guided me before. In my heart, you're my teacher." The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord said respectfully. The Will of Shadow didn't comment. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord didn't say much on this topic, afraid that he would arouse the other party's disgust. He planned to use his sincerity to slowly move the Will of Shadow and strive to really become the other party's disciple one day. He wouldn't give up any chances even though the probability was relatively low, in order to obtain a will-level legacy and become a will-level powerhouse. He pointed at the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade puppet on the black pillar and said with a smile, "Teacher, the sacrifice I brought you this time is the Grade 3 Supreme God realm, Supreme God of the Heavenly Blades puppet." Even though this god is only a Grade 3 Supreme God realm, he had once defeated a Grade 4 Supreme God. His potential is extremely shocking. Once he advances to a Grade 4 Supreme God in the future, he will definitely be the top existence among the Grade 4 Supreme Gods. Transform him into your Shadow General through a sacrificial ritual. He will definitely add a general with unlimited potential to you. Moreover, this God Spirit has 6 Supreme God Divine artifacts on him. They can also be used to increase the combat power of those Supreme God Shadow Generals under you. When the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord mentioned the Supreme God Divine artifact, his heart ached. That was the spoils of war he had reserved for him, and he had to give it all to the Will of Shadow. How could he not feel heartache? However, one could not trap a wolf if one could not bear to part with a child. For the inheritance of will, what was the big deal about paying some Supreme God Divine artifacts? Oh. When the Will of Shadow heard about the 6 Supreme God Divine artifacts, it was finally a little surprised. He looked at the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade puppet. Indeed, he saw a total of 6 Supreme God Divine artifacts on the other party's body. The Will of Shadow clicked its tongue in wonder. Supreme God Divine artifacts were very rare. It was rare to see 6 Supreme God Divine artifacts on a Grade 3 Supreme God realm. Not bad. I'm very satisfied with this sacrifice. Stay behind after the sacrificial ceremony. I'll give you some pointers. The Will of Shadow said. Thank you, my lord. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord was overjoyed and hurriedly said respectfully. The Will of Shadow nodded and looked at the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade again. It might just be a puppet, but it's enough. Let's follow the line of fate and unify his main body. The Will of Shadow muttered. Hearing this, Zhou Fight knew that he had to appear on the battlefield, otherwise, the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade would really be gone along with his main body. Ahem. He coughed lightly and announced his existence to the Will of Shadow, the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord, and the entire Shadow world. Chapter 1448, Supreme Unique Lord Talent, Lord of Holy Shadows. At this moment, the Supreme Shadow in the sky looked down at Zhou Fight. He didn't seem surprised at all. He had long known of the other party's existence. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord was stunned. Then, he suddenly turned to look at Zhou Fight. Lord of all races Reserve Army. Why are you here? He shouted in shock, if you can come, why can't I? Zhou Fight said with a faint smile. How dare you? The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord let out a sinister laugh. Initially, I was prepared to leave the Shadow world to deal with you after dealing with the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade. I didn't expect you to take the initiative to come and court death. Don't tell me you think I can't do anything to you just because you're a clone. I'm a Supreme God who mastered the law of instant death. Killing the clone and the main body is what I'm best at. He waved his hand as he spoke and a shadow world suddenly appeared behind him. Then, it rapidly expanded, and in the blink of an eye, it was about to envelop Zhou Fight. Zhou Fight frowned slightly when he saw this. He immediately activated the Lord Law skill of all the land in the world belongs to the king. A Lord-level nomological domain of the boundless universe suddenly appeared around him. This nomological domain that emitted a 9-colored light blocked the other party's shadow world as soon as it appeared. However, the other party was a supreme god after all. Even though Zhou Fight's all the land in the world belongs to the king had barely withstood the invasion of the other party's world, his lord's nomological domain was still shrinking at an astonishing speed. When it shrunk to the point of disappearing, Zhou Fight would be trapped in the other party's domain. At that time, Zhou Fight would be in a passive position. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord could not help but be shocked when he saw this scene. He could tell that Zhou Fight's domain law skill was a lord's domain law skill. At the same level or even in the process of fighting above one's level, it could greatly suppress other non-lord's law domains. But the key was that he was also a lord-type god spirit. Which supreme god was not a lord nomological god spirit? It was just that the path they took was different. As a supreme god, he could use his nomological world to suppress the other party's nomological domain. Logically speaking, he could instantly explode his nomological domain. However, the scene in front of him told he that a Lord God spirit with the strength of a top master god tier could actually use his domain to barely contend with his supreme god's world of laws. This was too ridiculous. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord naturally did not know. With the help of the Regal Sage Dao Sword, a Lord-type Supreme Divine Artifact, the power and effect of Zhou Fight's Lord Law skill increased by more than 10 times. Because of this, Zhou Fight's all the land in the world belongs to the king was not immediately blown up by his nomological world. Even so, Zhou Fight's situation was also dangerous. However, at this moment, an accident happened. A large number of shadow divine dragons suddenly appeared beside Zhou Fight. These shadow divine dragons swam around Zhou Fight. No matter how the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord's nomological world tried to invade, it was firmly blocked outside. There was no possibility of entering at all. When the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord saw this scene, his eyes immediately widened. Then, he looked up at the Supreme Shadow above him in disbelief and said with difficulty, "My lord, why do you want to protect the Lord of all races? Aren't you in the neutral camp? It's true that I'm a will-level existence in the middle camp. However, this kid is fated with me. He has my Shadow Realm's Lord talent. In the outside world, I don't care about his life or death, but in my territory, I want to protect him." The Will of Shadow said calmly. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord's heart sank. This Lord of all races reserve was actually related to this Lord Will of Shadow. He couldn't help but grit his teeth. With the protection of the Will of Shadow, he definitely wouldn't be able to deal with him. Why was this guy so lucky? It was actually related to this Lord Will. He could even make this Lord Will personally protect him. He was even a little jealous. Because he had licked the Will of Shadow for a long time and had even given a large number of offerings to the Supreme God Spirit, the Will of Shadow ignored him. At most, it would occasionally give him some pointers. He wanted me to ask Lord Will of Shadow to protect me when I'm in danger. What is he thinking? At the thought of this, the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord was even more jealous. At the same time, the Will of Shadow's words stirred Zhou Fight's memories. He was stunned for a moment. He immediately pulled up the Lord talent information of the Shadow World's Gate, and then his gaze fell on the last line. Specific Talent Effect 4, you are protected by the Will of Shadow and have the nomological talent of the Law of Shadow, True God Tier. F***CK, Zhou Fight was in disbelief. When he first saw the Lord talent of the Shadow World Gate, he had neglected this specific talent effect for the most. He was a Lord-type God spirit after all. He had no intention of walking the path of the law of shadow. Unexpectedly, the key to the effect of this talent was not the second half of the sentence, but the first half. Unexpectedly, the key to the effect of this talent was not the second half of the sentence, but the first half. How stupid was I back then to not care about this talent effect? Zhou Fei muttered to himself. The reason might be that Zhou's level was too far away from such a supreme willpower realm expert. It was so far away that Zhou Fei did not even have the slightest thought of making use of this half of the sentence. And now, I have the status of a reserve member of the Lord of all races, and I have the strength comparable to a supreme god and a force comparable to a top bloodline race. That's why I realize the preciousness of the effect of this Lord talent. Different strength means different horizons. Then, he looked at the supreme god of the heavenly blade puppet tied to the black shadow pillar, ready to offer sacrifices at any time. He felt more confident. Lord of all races reserve, common people's regal, God Lord Avatar of the blazing sun divine kingdom, Zhou Fei. Greetings, Lord Will of Shadow. Zhou Fei said respectfully. Not bad. The Will of Shadow actually praised him for once and chuckled. You have the Lord talent that I bestowed upon you. It's really beyond my expectations that you can actually reach the level of a reserve member of the Lord of all races. However, it has also allowed me to gain enough face in front of other supreme will realms. If that's the case, I'll reward you with a small gift. With that, a shadow airflow flew out of the supreme shadow's will holy body infused into Zhou Fei's body at lightning speed before disappearing. At the same time, Zhou Fei, Zhou Marshall, Zhou Manage, and Zhou Nine's 9 avatars saw a notification appear almost at the same time. Congratulations, Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom God Lord Blazing Sunday. Your epic tier Lord talent, Shadow World Gate has been granted supreme blessing by the will of Shadow and has been upgraded to supreme unique Lord talent, Lord of Holy Shadows. Chapter 1449, Holy Shadow Lord's talent information. At the same time, far away in Blazing Sun Divine Capital, Zhou was first stunned when he saw the notification in front of him. Then, he was pleasantly surprised. Supreme Unique Lord Talent. My second Supreme Unique Lord Talent was actually obtained from this will. Really? I didn't expect this. Zhou felt like he was in a dream. After he came back to his senses, he immediately checked the effect of this Lord Talent. Lord Talent, Lord of Holy Shadows, Supreme, Unique, Lord of Holy Shadows, Specific Talent Effect 1, you can open a door to the Shadow World that belongs to your Lord faction anywhere and at any time and enter the Shadow World. In the Shadow World, you and the members of your territory will have the identity of a Holy Shadow. Living beings with the identity of a Holy Shadow will be regarded by the life forms of the Shadow World as direct descendants of the Will of Shadow. They will have various top-notch survival rights, including but not limited to residence, travel, trade, life, battle, and so on. Specific Talent Effect 2, in the Shadow World, you have a Holy Shadow domain that completely belongs to you. The Holy Shadow domain belongs to the supreme territory of the Shadow World. It occupies 5% of the territory space of the Shadow World and has the best territory resources. This territory can't be upgraded. As the Lord of the Holy Shadow Realm, you and your subjects will be protected by the Will of Shadow. Moreover, your Lord faction will have top-notch supreme diplomatic relations with any faction in the Shadow World. Under the supreme diplomatic relations, one could freely trade with any faction in the Shadow World and enjoy all trade policies and benefits. That level of diplomatic relations cannot be reduced. Specific Talent Effect 3, you and your territorial forces can use all the warp gates of the Shadow World for free to undergo another world transition and head to another world. Specific Talent Effect 4, you are protected by the Will of Shadow and have obtained the divine inheritance of the Heavenly Shadow Supreme God. Zhou Zhou held his breath after reading it. Good Lord, is this the supreme unique version of the Shadow World Gate? It is indeed strong. Specific talent effect 1 directly made him and his subjects become heavenly celestial dragons in the Shadow World. As for the specific talent effect 2, he would first obtain a supreme territory. A supreme territory. It was a territory second only to the level of will. There were only about 100 of them in the entire high continent, but they were actually giving one away for free. In addition, the highest level of diplomatic relations could also allow the subjects under him to enjoy the highest level of diplomatic relations when they traded with other factions in the Shadow World. This could be considered another benefit of the heavenly celestial dragons. The specific talent effect 3 was the most practical talent effect. The Shadow World was the transit station of their blazing sun divine kingdom with this talent effect. In the future, they could go wherever they wanted through the warp gate of the Shadow World. From then on, the myriad worlds would become Zhou Zhou's playground. As for the specific talent effect 4, there was naturally no need to mention the protection of the will of shadow. As for the nomological inheritance of the Heaven Shadow Supreme God, it was well known to Zhou Zhou. This was because this Supreme God of Heaven Shadow was not only a Supreme God born from the Shadow World, but she was also the number 1 assassination god among the unquestionable supreme gods. The other party had even come into contact with the threshold of the supreme will. Unfortunately, later on, the other party did a shocking action that shocked all the god spirits, causing him to unfortunately fall. He went to assassinate the Netherworld will. After that, it was said that the Netherworld will suffered some injuries and cultivated in seclusion for more than 5,000 years to recover. The Heaven Shadow Supreme God naturally died. A top Supreme God of a generation, the future seed of Supreme Will, died in the long river of history just like that. He did not expect that he could actually obtain the inheritance of this top Supreme God today. The Supreme Gods are all connate regals. It's also beneficial for me to understand the inheritance of the other supreme gods. At the very least, I have a Shadow Clan Master God under me. If I give this inheritance to the Shadow Clan Master God tier, there's a high chance that it will bring me a supreme god level expert in the future. The more Zhou Zhou looked at it, the more satisfied he was. Of course, the most satisfying thing was the opportunity to warp infinitely. This would be of great use to him in the future when he conquered the myriad worlds. At the same time, in the Shadow Realm, Zhou Fight could not help but be shocked after reading the information about this supreme unique Lord talent. Your Excellency, this is too expensive. He said respectfully to the Will of Shadow. What's so precious about that? It's just some authority in the Shadow World. It's nothing to me. However, the Heaven Shadow Supreme God was considered my personal disciple when she was alive. It's a pity that the assassination target he set back then was too strong. Otherwise, if he had chosen a weaker willpower level existence, he might have been able to successfully assassinate and advance to the willpower realm. You still have to pay more attention to him. He has already comprehended the threshold of the Supreme Will realm when he was alive. If you eat it completely, your chances of success will increase when you advance to the Will realm in the future. The Will of Shadow said. As soon as these words were spoken, the eyes of the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord in the distance turned even redder, and his heart became even sourer. The Heaven Shadow Supreme God. That was the former number 1 assassination god. He even came into contact with the threshold of a supreme will. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord's original plan was that if he failed to lick it after a long time and the Will of Shadow was still unwilling to hand over his will inheritance to him, he would settle for the next best thing and request the inheritance of the Heaven Shadow Supreme God. The Will of Shadow had accepted so many offerings from him. There was a high chance that it would hand over this top Supreme God inheritance to him. At that time, if he comprehended the inheritance of the Heaven Shadow Supreme God, he might be able to comprehend the threshold of that supreme will. He might even inherit the will of the Heaven Shadow Supreme God and become an existence at the Supreme Will realm. However, he never expected that what he could not obtain was actually obtained by a junior who had just been received by the will of Shadow. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord only felt that his jealousy was burning crazily. What right? What right does he have? He shouted crazily in his heart. On the other side. Thank you, Lord Will of Shadow. I'll remember it. Zhou Fight naturally did not know what the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord was thinking. He thanked him sincerely in the face of this supreme unique Lord talent. The Will of Shadow did not speak. As a will-level existence in the neutral faction, it was common for him to befriend the powerhouses of the Supreme Will and the Crimson Overlord. He was already used to such methods. In addition, he did admire this Lord of all races reserve. It was not impossible for him to help. It was just some authority and inheritance. Now it's time to enjoy my sacrifice. The Will of Shadow stopped talking to Zhou Fight and looked at the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade puppet tied to the Black Shadow Pillar. Wait, Lord Will of Shadow. Zhou Fight braced himself and said. Chapter 1450, Release and Price. Why? Can you release that Supreme God? He is my friend. Zhou Fight said. He will definitely die even if I let himself go. The Will of Shadow said, he used a law skill that sacrificed his life before his survival. Even though this law skill can delay his death, if he doesn't kill the target marked by he before he officially dies, he will die directly. Only by killing the marked target could he reincarnate. Zhou Fight was stunned when he heard this. Then, his gaze landed on the envious Supreme God of the Shadow King in the distance. There was no mistake. The Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade must have marked this Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord. Therefore, only by killing the other party could he save the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade. At the thought of this, Zhou Fight naturally knew that he could not deal with the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord alone. However, if the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord did not die, the ones who would suffer would be the main body in the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Even if the Supreme Will would stand up to save him in the end. Then, his evaluation in the Supreme Will's heart would definitely decrease greatly. This was naturally unacceptable to Zhou Fight, who had the ambition to become the Lord of all races. At the thought of this, he immediately said respectfully to the Will of Shadow, Lord Will of Shadow, please let my friend go. I will definitely remember this favor. There's no need for a favor. How about you send me 2 grade 4 Supreme God offerings in the future? The Will of Shadow chuckled. A grade 3 Supreme God realm puppet in exchange for 2 grade 4 Supreme Gods. He felt that it was unfair no matter how he thought about it. However, Zhou Fight still agreed without hesitation. What to do? The Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade was now the life-saving straw for the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. When the main body and clone did not want to take the risk, the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade puppet had to survive. The Will of Shadow was not surprised to see that the other party had agreed. Even though he lived in the Shadow World, he knew most of the things in the myriad worlds. He naturally knew how important the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade was to Zhou Fight. Otherwise, he would not have proposed such a ridiculous exchange. Then, with a thought, he saw the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade puppet tied to the Black Shadow Pillar suddenly dissipate. Without restraint, the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade puppet immediately turned into a blade light and charged at the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord's expression changed slightly. He immediately opened the door of the Shadow World and flew away. With the support of 6 supreme divine artifacts, even he did not dare to face the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade head-on. By the time the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade caught up, the door of the Shadow World had already disappeared. Zhou Feit raised his eyebrows slightly. It turned out that the other party had also grasped the ability of the Shadow World Gate. However, it was normal thinking about it. This thing was originally given to him by the will of Shadow. It was normal for him to give it to others, not to mention that the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord had licked the will of Shadow for so long. He didn't think too much about it and had a thought. Lord of Holy Shadow's Lord Talent was activated, and a warp gate emitting spatial fluctuations appeared in front of the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade. The door opened with a bang. Outside the door was the Chaos Sea. Looking into the distance, they could even vaguely see the scene of the army of the three top bloodline races and the elite subsidiary races fighting the army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. The Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade was thinking about how to leave the Shadow World when he saw this scene. He turned to look at Zhou Feit. Your Excellency Heavenly Blade, quickly kill the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord. He can't escape with me here. Zhou Feit said with a smile. He, indeed, had the right to say this as the Lord of Holy Shadow who had grasped countless warp gates. The Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade nodded slightly and rushed out of the warp gate, chasing after the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord. Lord, I'll take my leave too. Seeing this, Zhou Feit bade farewell to the will of Shadow and returned to the Chaos Sea through the warp gate. After the warp gate closed, a shadow suddenly gathered together and formed a not-so-substantial Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord. My lord! Why did you let that guy go? That fellow has 6 Supreme God Divine artifacts and has marked me. He has the intention to kill me. He will kill me if you let him go. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord said respectfully. What does it have to do with me? The will of Shadow said calmly. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord was stunned. What? What did it have to do with you? King sent so many Supreme Gods to be your sacrifice. I've bootlicked you for so long. What does it have to do with you if you tell me now? The will of Shadow seemed to have sensed what the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord was thinking and said calmly, I'll give you a Supreme Divine artifact and give you pointers. Don't be too greedy. In a word, it made the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord's heart turn cold. So that was what the will of Shadow thought. He looked at the Supreme Shadow in the sky and seemed to feel the extreme coldness in the shadow. Alright, then. I'll take my leave. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord felt sad, but he bowed respectfully on the surface before his body quietly dissipated. You're greedy and don't know when to stop. The will of Shadow snorted and quietly dissipated. Then, the towering shadow pillar dissipated. The living beings kneeling in the shadow world stood up and looked at the sky with reverence after the shadow pillar dissipated. The Chaos Sea. When Zhou Feit returned, he realized that the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade and the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord were not here. It was obvious that they had gone somewhere to fight. However, Zhou Feit was not worried. The Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade had the battle record of defeating a Grade 4 Supreme God and he had 6 Supreme Divine artifacts. As long as nothing went wrong, there was no reason for the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade to lose. He teleported and returned to the battlefield where the army was fighting. He was shocked as soon as he returned. This was because the situation on the battlefield had actually reversed. Previously, the 3 bloodline races and their elite subsidiary races had jointly attacked the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom army. Now, the original Spirit race and the Shepherd's God race, one of the 3 top bloodline races, had actually changed their offensive direction and attacked their previous ally, the Chaos God's race. The army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom was very smart when they saw this. They directly joined in and attacked the Chaos God's race with the original Spirit race, the Shepherd's God race, and their elite subsidiary races. The scene changed from 3 against 1 to 3 against 1. The one person had suddenly transformed. He took another look and also discovered that Origin and Di Huang were also attacking the Heaven Curse beast. Did he suddenly come to his senses? Zhou Feit was confused. However, it didn't matter. It was fine as long as the situation was beneficial to him. However, it's only because the situation on the battlefield is favorable. In the end, the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade will still affect the outcome of the war. Zhou Feit muttered. The influence of a Supreme God on the battlefield was too terrifying. It could almost affect most of the chances of winning on the battlefield. Especially a Supreme God who was good at assassination. If they were careless and allowed the other party to assassinate the leader of the race, they would definitely lose the war. Fortunately, Zhou Feit was no longer worried because the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade, who had grown a new head, returned with an ownerless black dagger. Chapter 1451, Grade 4 Supreme Divine Artifact, Divine Dagger. The Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord is dead. The Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade said in a low voice. Zhou Feit looked at the Supreme God-level black dagger and could not help but reveal a smile. The Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade had taken down the strongest enemy, the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord, which meant that the strongest methods of the three top bloodline factions were no longer effective. Their remaining trump cards were nothing more than some Supreme God-level treasures. For Zhou Feit, there was no need to worry. He had never been afraid of competing in the number of Supreme God treasures. Which meant it was only a matter of time before he won this war. Your Excellency is mighty. Your Excellency is indeed the number one God of Saber Dao among the Supreme Gods. Seeing is better than hearing 100 times. I'm really impressed. Zhou Feit was overjoyed and kept saying good things to the other party as if they were free. This was the savior of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Wasn't she just saying something nice to he? As long as he could encounter such a big brother every time he encountered a crisis, Zhou Feit expressed that he could talk until the sea dried up. The Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade had been silently accepting Zhou Feit's praise. When Zhou Feit praised and rested, he took off all the Supreme Divine Artifacts on him, and was about to hand them to Zhou Feit. Zhou Feit was stunned. Good God! These were 6 Supreme Divine Artifacts. The other party only had one Supreme God Divine Artifact on him, and it was only a second-grade Supreme God Divine Artifact. He could actually take it off and return it to him without any reluctance. This would not do, this Supreme Divine Artifact was still returned to him. How could he invite Big Brother over in the future? At the thought of this, Zhou Feit's expression turned solemn. Your Excellency Heavenly Blade, you saved our Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom from fire and water. Even though the 6 Supreme God Divine Artifacts are precious, how can they compare to saving our lives? There's a saying in my hometown that a drop of water should be repaid with a spring. Please accept these 6 Supreme God Divine Artifacts as a token of my appreciation. The Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade puppet was stunned. Even though he had a dull personality, it didn't mean that he didn't know what was good. These were 6 Supreme God Divine Artifacts. Every Supreme God Divine Artifact was enough to make countless Supreme Gods go crazy. The appearance of 6 Supreme God Divine Artifacts at the same time was enough to cause a bloody battle between the Supreme Gods. The enhancement of 6 Supreme God Divine Artifacts on a Supreme God's combat strength was too terrifying after all. He was a Grade 3 Supreme God realm who could at most defeat a Grade 4 Supreme God and not kill one. With the enhancement of the 6 Supreme God Divine Artifacts, killing a top grade for Supreme God like the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord was like killing a dog. If the other Supreme Gods in the outside world knew about this, they would definitely shout that it was ridiculous. This Lord of all races was clearly aware that he had also seen the value of the 6 Supreme God Divine Artifacts, but he was still willing to give them all to him. At that time, The supreme god of the heavenly blade puppet even felt that the other party was joking with him. However, he looked at the other party's serious expression and knew that what he said was true. The other party was really willing to give him these 6 supreme god divine artifacts. The supreme god of the heavenly blade puppet did not speak, but he secretly clicked his tongue. This existence that had summoned he was generous enough. As expected of the Lord of all races reserve army that the Supreme will personally chose and had high hopes for. It was indeed not something other Lord of all races reserves could compare to. He had lived for countless years and had directly or indirectly come into contact with the reserve army of other lords of all races. He dared to guarantee that at least in terms of generosity, the 3 lords of all races would definitely not be so generous as to give he 6 supreme divine artifacts. Even if he had saved them and their faction. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but he didn't have the ability to know, right? The supreme god of the heavenly blade thought for a moment and then cut open a spatial passageway. He threw the 6 supreme divine artifacts into the spatial passageway and restored it. I'll remember what you gave me. This is for you. I don't need it. The supreme god of the heavenly blade said. Then, he threw the black dagger of the scarlet supreme god Shadow Lord to Zhou Fight. The black dagger was cold to the touch, but it was surprisingly smooth. Zhou Fight looked at the black dagger and a text notification quickly appeared. Divine Artifact Name, Divine Dagger, Divine Artifact Grade, Grade 4 Supreme Divine Artifact, Divine Artifact Law 1, the Divine Dagger was born from drinking divine blood. Every time the Divine Dagger is used to kill a Grade 4 Supreme God, the Divine Dagger will immediately obtain a layer of divine power. Every layer of divine power can increase the power of the Divine Dagger. Accumulate 10,000%. Divine Artifact Law 2, Demon Slaying Body. The Divine Dagger is the Supreme Divine Lord Law of instant death. It can command the power of instant death in the heavens. When the controller uses the Divine Dagger, his attack will obtain a 20% chance of instant death. At the same time, he will be immune to the instant death effects of supreme gods and below. Divine Artifact Law 3, God Slaying and Demon Destroying / exhaust 10 levels of God-slaying power and release a stunning blow with instant death attribute to the enemy. After attacking the enemy, there is a 50% chance that the enemy will die immediately. Divine Artifact Law 4, God-slaying Dagger. The God-slaying Dagger is a sacred artifact of the law of the Lord of Death. The owner can enter it with his will and comprehend the mysteries of the laws and will. Prompt, requires willpower to recognize a master. After reading it, Zhou Fight gasped. Top grade Grade 4 Supreme Divine Artifact. Moreover, it's a Supreme Divine Artifact that has a chance of advancing to a Grade 1 Sacred Artifact in the future. Zhou Fight looked at the Grade 4 Supreme Divine Artifact in his hand in shock. Needless to say about the God-slaying and demon-destroying / it was the ability of a Supreme Divine Artifact to advance to a will holy artifact. The god's demon body was also very strong. Not only could he obtain a 20% chance of instant death, he could also be immune to the instant death effect of supreme gods and below. Just the ability behind it was enough for Zhou and his clones to carry this Grade 4 Supreme Divine Artifact every day to protect their lives. The third Divine Artifact Law, God-slaying and demon-destroying / was even more ridiculous. With one / there was a 50% chance of survival and a 50% chance of death. Was the opponent afraid of such an unreasonable attack mechanism? However, the price of 10 levels of Divine Dagger made every opportunity to use this move precious. Currently, the Divine Dagger with only 16 levels of God-slaying and demon-destroying / could only be used once. If Zhou Fight wanted to use him, he had to consider if it was worth it and if there was a need to use it. As for the fourth ability, it allowed the owner of the Supreme Divine Artifact to have the chance to comprehend the Lord's law of instant death, Supreme God level. All 4 abilities were top-notch. Are you sure you don't want to keep this supreme divine artifact? Zhou Feit was curious about the supreme god. The divine artifact is very good, but it doesn't match my path. I don't need the so-called instant death to kill the enemy with my saber. The supreme divine artifact you gave me is enough. The supreme god of the heavenly blade said. Zhou Feit blinked. This supreme god of the heavenly blade's personality is really unique. But I like it. Perhaps only with such a personality could he focus on cultivating the law of sword to this extent. Chapter 1452, Submission. My time is up. The Lord of all races reserve army. We will definitely meet again when we have the chance. The supreme god of the heavenly blade said. Then, his entire divine body suddenly collapsed and disappeared. When Zhou Feit saw this, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Even though he had lost this top-notch trump card, Zhou Feit did not feel that it was a loss. Instead, he felt that it was very profitable. Super profitable. Not only was he on good terms with this top supreme god, more importantly, he turned to look at the battlefield that was already showing signs of victory and said with a faint smile. It's time for this war to end. 3 hours later, under the siege of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's army, the original Spirit Race's army, the Shepherd's God Race's army, and more than 6,000 elite subsidiary races, the Chaos Gods Race's army and its subsidiary races were almost completely wiped out. Even the Heaven Curse Beast had been killed 3 times by the combined forces of Origin and Di Huang. However, because the other party's constitution was special, even with the methods of the 2 top Master God tiers, they were not completely killed. Instead, not long after they were killed, the Heaven Curse Beast immediately revived. The Heaven Curse Beast was very arrogant. It said that Origin and Di Huang were just SOSO, and their expressions were relaxed and casual. Even when the Chaos Gods Race's army was on the verge of destruction, he still looked unconcerned. The Origin and Heaven Curse Beast's expressions were gloomy, but they could not do anything to the other party's immortal body. The 2 of them believed that their strength was not inferior to the Heaven Curse Beast at all. However, the other party's immortal body was indeed disgusting. This situation lasted until Zhou Feit appeared in front of the other party. Origin and Di Huang were in disbelief. The Heaven Curse Beast went crazy. Why aren't you dead yet? The Heaven Curse Beast said crazily. They had paid such a huge price to invite the top supreme god who was good at assassination. He really could not figure out why this human lord was still alive. If this human lord was still alive, wouldn't their plot become a joke? Especially the Heaven Curse Beast. He had sworn to kill this Lord of all races reserve army to create trouble for the Supreme Will. Great! The Lord of all races is alive and well. He had become a clown in the eyes of the Supreme Will. Why isn't this Emperor dead? Zhou Feit played with the divine dagger in his hand and looked at the Heaven Curse Beast with a faint smile. Naturally, it's because the so-called top assassin god that you guys found was killed by this Emperor's subordinates. Do you see the divine dagger in my hand? Does it look familiar? Even though the supreme god of the heavenly blade was not Zhou Feit's subordinate, his puppet was Zhou Zhou's possession, so it was not a big deal to say that the other party was his subordinate. He was just a one-time subordinate. The Heaven Curse Beast stared at the divine dagger in Zhou Feit's hand. As a grade 4 supreme god that he had personally invited, he naturally knew what this black dagger was. As a grade 4 supreme god that he had personally invited, he naturally knew what this black dagger was. Now, it had actually fallen into the hands of the other party. Could it really be as the other party had said, that his subordinates had killed that lord? Thinking of how the supreme god of the heavenly blade puppet wore 6 supreme divine artifacts, the Heaven Curse Beast felt that it was indeed possible for that lord to be killed. When the Heaven Curse Beast thought of this, it immediately fell silent. In the next second, he suddenly passed through Origin and Di Huang and turned into a white stream of light, charging towards Zhou Fight. "I want you dead!" he shouted furiously. However, in the next second, swoosh! 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 3 blades of will that were emitting white light, as if they were tangible, had unknowingly floated above the heaven curse beast's head. The blade of will that emitted the aura of the will divine transformation realm made the heaven curse beast not dare to move. Origin and Di Huang looked at Zhou Fight from behind and widened their eyes in shock. The will divine transformation realm. This Lord of all races reserve was clearly not even a master god, but his will had already broken through the will-like light realm and reached the will divine transformation realm that they dreamed of. Didn't this mean that becoming a supreme god in the future was not difficult for this Lord of all races? Didn't this mean that becoming a supreme god in the future was not difficult for this Lord of all races? Origin and Di Huang looked at each other and saw the bitterness on each other's faces. So this is the Lord of all races that the Supreme Will had high hopes for. TM impressed. At this moment, they were truly convinced. Only he is qualified to be the reserve army of the Lord of all races. No one can replace him. Origin said with a complicated tone. Di Huang nodded silently. At this moment, the 2 gods had no objections to this Lord of the Blazing Sun becoming the Lord of all races reserve army. On the other side, Zhou Fight looked at the heaven curse beast coldly. "You seem to have a lot to say about me and the Supreme Will. Why? Why?" The heaven curse beast looked at Zhou Fight and laughed hysterically. "You're asking me why? I've been imprisoned in the endless chaos sea by the Supreme Will for countless years. Ever since I was born, I've never left the chaos sea. To the Supreme Will, I'm just a slave. No. Not just slaves. He is still doing all sorts of experiments on me, torturing me without sleep or rest. I'm still a test subject without dignity. Even though I'm a top master god, I'm not as free and happy as the ordinary life forms in the myriad worlds. Can't I have a problem with the Supreme Will? Let's not talk about you. Even if the Supreme Will were to come personally, I would do it without hesitation at all costs. I can't wait for the Supreme Will to die." Zhou Fight narrowed his eyes and sneered. "You think you can do something to the Supreme Will? Don't make me laugh. Not only can you not even kill the Supreme Will, you can't even do anything to me, a true god-tier advanced grade god spirit. You even gave me a top-notch supreme divine artifact for nothing. Thank you." When the heaven curse beast heard this, its vision turned black. Why was this Lord of all races not only lucky, but he also had such a bad mouth? Zhou Fight did not care what the other party was thinking. His gaze landed on Origin and Di Huang, who were not far away. Origin and Di Huang looked at each other and finally came to Zhou with nervous expressions. "Greetings, Lord of all races," the 2 god spirits said nervously. After the other party revealed the will divine transformation realm, the 2 of them felt that they already had any right to be arrogant in front of the other party. If this Lord of all races was willing, he could easily kill the 2 of them with 2 blades of will. What top 10 master gods? They did not even dare to raise their heads in front of the will divine transformation realm will blade. Therefore, their attitude was very humble now. Chapter 1453, Supreme I and Reward Editor, Ada Studios. I wouldn't dare to accept that title. Zhou Fight smiled and said, "This emperor has never heard of a race that would dare to take the risk of offending the Supreme Will and take the initiative to attack and harm the Lord of all races reserve army. This emperor's reserve army as the Lord of all races must be real." Origin and Di Huang panicked. "My lord. Previously, we were bewitched by the heaven curse beast and made such a stupid decision. You are the reserve army of the Lord of all races, and we are the direct line of descent of the Supreme Will. If not for the bewitchment of the heaven curse beast, why would we make a mistake to deal with you? And now we've come to our senses. Sir, take a look. After recognizing the Heaven Curse Beast scheme, we have already ordered our army and the elite subsidiary race army to counterattack the Heaven Curse Beast's Chaos God army. The Chaos Gods race has been completely defeated. Everything that belongs to the chaotic gods should belong to you, my lord. Di Huang hurriedly said respectfully. Origin echoed from the side. At this moment, they had completely lost their former arrogance and dignity. Far away in the Divine Kingdom world, Zhou Zhou looked at the two top-notch master god tiers who were extremely respectful to his clones through Zhou Fight's perspective. He sighed inwardly. There was a time when he first heard the names of the two top bloodline factions of the original spirit race and the Chaos Gods race. He felt that these two top bloodline factions were extremely distant targets. They were targets to chase after and terrifying opponents that he could not contend against. Now, the patriarchs of these two top bloodline factions were bowing down to him and wagging their tails at him. The patriarch of the other top-notch bloodline race was already trembling under the blade of his will, not daring to resist. FM not who I used to be but RM still the old me. Zhou Zhou had a smile on his face. Then, he continued to observe Zhou Fight's perspective. At the same time, Zhou Fight calmly said after hearing Di Huang's words. The Chaos Gods race was defeated by this emperor. Everything they have is mine to begin with. Yes, yes. I was wrong. Di Huang hurriedly said. One heard that your majesty has the Chaos human bloodline. You are so right. This Chaos Sea was originally the territory of the Chaos human race. It was just that it was snatched away by the Chaos Gods race. Now that His Majesty has descended here again and defeated the Chaos Gods race, it's time to return it to its rightful owner. The remaining Chaos Gods race members should be your Majesty's slaves. Origin agreed and even kindly suggested to Zhou Fight. When the Heaven Curse Beast, which was controlled by the three Will Blades, heard that the three gods had decided the ownership of the Chaos Sea and the future of the Chaos Gods race with just a few words, its face immediately turned red, and its eyes were filled with anger. But, he didn't dare to say nor could he say anything. The victor is a noble, and the loser is a bandit. This has been the ancient truth. He had long understood this principle. However, in the past, they had always been the victors. Now, it was finally his turn to be reduced to a loser and pay the price. On the other side, Zhou Fight turned around and looked at the battlefield. After destroying the Chaos Gods race and their elite subsidiary races, the battlefield gradually returned to calm. Especially when they saw how respectful their patriarch was to the God Lord of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, the army of the original Spirit race and the Mu God race did not know how to face the army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom that had just been an enemy. The die is cast. This war is finally over. Zhou Fight finally heaved a sigh of relief. He was no longer worried on the high continent. Next, he could focus on developing in the ultimate void battleground. Zhou Fight thought. Then, he thought of his main body, who was comfortably watching the show in the Divine Kingdom world. His face immediately darkened. Our main body has really unleashed our Tao to the extreme. He's at the early stage of right for supremacy of the Lord of all races. At the very least, he has accompanied the army to battle a few times. Ever since I had the clone technique, I stopped following the army and handling government affairs. I sat in the reincarnation sacred palace every day and completed my daily mission. This personality, after Zhou Fight lost his temper for a while, he suddenly laughed. It was good that his main body was like this. His clones were truly safe only if his main body was safe. His main body could be revived by consuming his origin even if the clones died. However, if the main bodies died, the clones would all be finished. Then, he began to think about how to deal with Origin and Di Huang. Just as he had some thoughts. In the sky above the Chaos Sea, a boundless pure white light suddenly appeared out of thin air and quickly condensed into a pure white eye. It was the Supreme Eye. Zhou Feit was stunned. He said respectfully with a calm expression, "Greetings, Supreme Will." "Greetings, Supreme Will." A deep fear appeared on Origin and Di Huang's faces. They immediately knelt on the ground and said in panic. However, Supreme Eye did not look at the two criminals. Instead, it looked at Zhou Feit. He looked at Zhou Feit. It was as if he could see Zhou observing them from his eyes. Far away in the Divine Kingdom world, Zhou stood up helplessly and said respectfully, "Greetings, Lord Supreme Will. You seem dissatisfied." The Supreme Eye in the Chaos Sea said. "I wouldn't dare to be." Zhou, who was in the Divine Kingdom world, smiled and said, "It's just that this war was thrilling enough. I didn't expect these guys to actually invite a Grade 4 Supreme God, and a top-notch Grade 4 Supreme God at that. If I didn't have a trump card, I would have died easily. That won't happen." The Supreme Eye said, "That Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord won't be your match with your trump cards and all your methods. It's a pity that I didn't see your full combat strength. That's the trial scene I wanted to see. As a lord, fighting and killing at the front of the battlefield is not what I think a lord should look like." Zhou shook his head, disagreeing with the Supreme Will. "You have a point. Every lord has a path that every lord has to walk. Just like how the Lord's law will create more than 10,000 supreme gods with different paths, you should also have a path that belongs to the Lord you want to walk. It's not bad that you have such an idea and dare to use it to refute my suggestion. As expected of the Lord of all races reserve army that I personally chose." When the Supreme Eye heard Zhou's rebuttal, not only did it not hate him, it even became more satisfied. "I knew about this matter the entire time, but I didn't make a move. I wanted to use this matter as an experience for you to prove yourself. You've just become a Lord of all races reserve army. Be it the three other Lord of all races reserve armies or the will existences beside me, most of them want to see your ability and see if you're qualified to sit in this position. They have seen your performance today. After today, the doubts about you becoming a Lord of all races reserve army will be reduced by more than half. You're doing great. I can give you 2 rewards." The Supreme Eye said. Chapter 1454, Reward and Choice. Zhou's eyes lit up. "What's the reward?" he immediately asked impatiently. "The first reward is that you're about to head to the ultimate void battleground. I can make the decision to double the number of gods you can bring with you. Don't think that this number is very small. The ultimate void battlefield was actually created by the ultimate void race. Even I can't send too many local god spirits into the ultimate void battlefield. You'll also need to spend a lot of effort to double the number of divine subordinates you have." The Supreme Will said. Zhou Feit pondered for a second and asked, "Does the ultimate void race have existences like you and the Crimson Overlord?" "Yes. That guy claims to be the Void Emperor. The Void Emperor is inferior to Crimson Overlord and me in terms of strength. However, the Void Emperor is good at void techniques. The entire void is the domain and battlefield that he is most familiar with. His life preservation ability is extremely strong. As for Crimson Overlord and I, because we have to guard the Supreme Great Cosmos and the Crimson Great Cosmos, we can't leave the Great Cosmos for too long. Therefore, it's very difficult to completely destroy the Void Emperor. As a result, this fellow has been harassing my and Crimson Overlord's Great Cosmos. He has grown into a scourge that we have to guard against now. However, you don't have to be too afraid of him. Crimson Overlord and I have clones guarding the ultimate void battleground. The other party and his willpower level subordinates won't dare to attack you. If they dare to attack, don't blame us for bullying the weak. As for existences below the Supreme God level, the Supreme Eye's tone revealed a smile, "It's up to you." The comers of Zhou Zhou's mouth twitched. "My heavenly blade Supreme God puppet has been used up. Use your lucky star more." The Supreme Eye said, "This race's divine artifact is a little lacking in other aspects, but the probability of it dropping a puppet is still quite high. Zhou Zhou, I was wondering why this lucky star kept popping up puppets. So this was its obscure attribute. As for the second reward, one can upgrade any of your Lord talents to the Supreme God unique level. Tell me about it. Which Lord talent do you want to upgrade to a Supreme One Lord talent?" The Supreme Eye said. Zhou Zhou's eyes lit up. It was actually this reward. He liked it. Then, he began to think. Which Lord's innate ability was better? The first thing that he thought of was the mythical tier Lord talent, the Scarlet Broodmother. This Lord talent provided him with a huge team. During his rise, the help this Lord talent provided him was definitely not inferior to Heavenly Fate Di Huang's Lord talent. However, he was going to the Ultimate Void Battleground next. Raising this Lord talent was not very meaningful to his trip to the Ultimate Void Battleground. And his influence in the High Continent was already enough to call himself invincible in the heavens. If he continued to increase the number of his troops, to be honest, the effect would naturally be there, but it did not seem to be very meaningful. Then what should he upgrade? Zhou Zhou opened his Lord Talent list and glanced at all the Lord Talents he currently had. Finally, his gaze landed on a familiar Lord Talent. Mythical Tier Unique Lord Talent 10,000 Spirit Saint. This Lord Talent, Zhou Zhou muttered to himself. During this period of time, one of the Lord Talents he relied on the most, the 10,000 Spirit Saint, had suffered repeated setbacks under the other party's Supreme God-level defensive methods. During this period of time, one of the Lord Talents he relied on the most, the 10,000 Spirit Saint, had suffered repeated setbacks under the other party's Supreme God-level defensive methods. Even though he did not need the 10,000 Spirit Saint to win all the battles he had experienced recently, however, in the past, with a wave of his hand, half of the opposing soldiers had surrendered. The war that should have lasted for a long time had instantly obtained more than an 80% chance of winning. For example, today's war. If he had the 10,000 Spirit Saint at the Supreme God level, why would he care about the 1,000 capital units army, 2 billion God spirits, 300,000 true God tiers, and more than 1,000 master gods? One 10,000 Spirit Saint and half of the soldiers and God spirits were his. Plus the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade puppet and the Supreme Divine Artifact in his hands. It could be said that the war had just begun, but it had already ended. How could they fight for so long like now? /F** King Insta killed him. Most importantly, the Supreme Level 10,000 Spirit Saint could be used on the Ultimate Void battlefield. Moreover, there was no lack of Supreme God spirits and Supreme God forces in the Ultimate Void battleground. When the time comes, if he unleashed the 10,000 Spirit Saint, he might even be able to induce Insight Defection to become a Supreme God level subordinate. Even if he could only incite defection one Supreme God spirit. He had already made a killing. Then how could he still go to the Ultimate Void battleground to accept the test? He was going to the Ultimate Void battleground to stock up. At this thought, Zhou Zhou no longer hesitated and said, "Lord Supreme Will, I want to upgrade my 10,000 Spirit Saint to the Supreme Unique Lord Talent." "Sure." The Supreme Eye did not say anything. A pure white beam of light flew out of the Supreme Eye and descended in front of Zhou Zhou through spacetime, fusing into his divine body. This is the Supreme Will's source power. It's amazing. Zhou Zhou felt the gentle yet domineering feeling in his body, and a strange look flashed across his eyes. There were countless paths that could be taken by lords. If the path that Zhou Zhou took was the supreme path of ruling everything, the power of the Supreme Will gave Zhou Zhou the feeling that greatest virtue is like water, nurturing all things without competing with them. No one in the world can compete with a man who doesn't compete. What incredible power! Zhou Zhou muttered to himself. This was a power that was the complete opposite of his control. However, from this completely opposite point of view, it inexplicably matched the core of the Lord's law, control. He ruled, he was invincible. As for the supreme will, it controlled him to be invincible. The supreme will has never fought for anything. He only released the target of the Lord of all races, but he made all the life forms of the myriad races in the world obey him. And the supreme will is sitting on the fence. Wait quietly for the heir he wants to appear. Isn't this also a manifestation of the path of the supreme will? Zhou Zhou muttered to himself. Then, he stopped thinking about it. The path of the supreme will was indeed not bad. However, he was not bad either. Moreover, in terms of the variety of methods, his path as a lord was even better. He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He quietly felt the improvement of his supreme unique lord talent. He could feel that after the third supreme unique lord talent was augmented on him, his lord talent had increased again. Even the cultivation progress of the supreme sacred body had increased greatly. The more Zhou Zhou felt, the more satisfied he was. A moment later, the supreme unique lord talent had completed its transformation. Zhou Zhou looked at the latest information on the 10,000 spirit saints lord talent. Chapter 1455, The Only Supreme Lord Talent, Son of Destiny. 3 Punishments. Lord Talent Notification, your mythical tier. Unique Lord Talent has been personally blessed by the Supreme Will and advanced to the Supreme Unique Lord Talent. Son of Destiny, Supreme, Unique, Specific Talent Effect 1, you are the Son of Destiny favored by the providence of the myriad worlds. Only then will the people of the heavens gather by your side and help you achieve a supreme undertaking. Specific Talent Effect 2, Active, when you fight the enemy faction head-on, as long as the enemy faction is at the Supreme God level or below, you can activate the Son of Destiny talent. Under the Son of Destiny Lord talent, 50% of the enemies in the enemy faction will be summoned by the heavens and take the initiative to become your loyal subordinate. Passive, you can even subdue all the living beings in the myriad worlds without any other methods with your own reputation and make these life forms take the initiative to submit to you. Lord Talent Notification 1, the minimum number of enemies summoned by the heavens is 1 unit of enemies, and the maximum number is unlimited. Lord Talent Notification 2, you can activate the Son of Destiny Lord Talent on any level and number of opposing factions. You can induce insight defection to the highest level. Lord Talent Notification 3, the active effect of this talent can only be activated once a day. Passive effect has no frequency limit. Lord Talent Notification 4, enemies affected by the Son of Destiny have a minimum basic loyalty of 99 points and will never betray you. Lord Talent Notification 5, this talent cannot be used twice against the same enemy faction. A smile appeared on Zhou Zhou's face after reading it. The 10,000 Spirit Saint had advanced to the Son of Destiny. This name sounded very scary. However, the content of the talent was not much different, it was fine as long as one thing worked. As long as the enemy faction is at the Supreme God level or below, I can activate the Son of Destiny talent and induce 50% of the enemies in the enemy Lord's faction to become my loyal subordinates. Moreover, I can induce them to become Supreme God-level powerhouses. This is what I want. Zhou Zhou was overjoyed. In the future, he should not lack Supreme God-level powerhouses. Thank you, Lord Supreme Will. After he came back to his senses, he immediately said respectfully to the High and Mighty Supreme I. It's a piece of cake. Get ready to go to the ultimate void battleground. The Supreme I did not say anything else. Its gaze landed on Origin and Di Huang. Lord Supreme I. Origin and Di Huang's bodies trembled and they immediately knelt on the ground in fear. You disappoint me. The Supreme I said calmly. Lord Supreme we're just worried about the future of our race. Origin said with a pained expression. Lord Supreme I was bewitched by the heaven-cursed beast. Otherwise, how could I have the guts to attack your Lord of all Races reserve army? Di Huang shouted. Oh. Are you speaking from the bottom of your hearts? The Supreme I said calmly. He looked down at the strongest leaders of these two top-notch bloodline races with a calm and deep gaze. Under the gaze of the Supreme I, the two god spirits felt as if all the secrets in their hearts had been seen through. No lie could escape this lord's eyes. The two god spirits had a premonition that if the two of them dared to lie next, once they were discovered, the punishment the two god spirits faced would definitely far exceed their imagination. After Origin hesitated in pain for a moment, he suddenly seemed to have lost all his strength and whispered, Your Excellency, am indeed worried that after Your Excellency common people's regal becomes the Supreme Lord in the future, he will settle the scores. That's why I risked the world's condemnation to attack your Lord of all Races reserve. But other than that, I'm too eager to become a supreme god, too eager to obtain the position of the Lord of all Races reserve. Coupled with the urging of the heaven-cursed beast from the side, my rationality was blinded by the greed and impulsiveness in my heart. The above reason is also one of the reasons why I did these things. Di Huang trembled when he heard this. Then, he said bitterly, I am the same. Zhou clicked his tongue when he saw this. These two god spirits were not too stupid. As expected of a direct subordinate of the supreme will, they was still self-aware and straightforward in admitting their mistake. After Supreme I heard the two god spirits' words, it did not reply immediately. Instead, it looked at them calmly. In this suffocating atmosphere, after a long time, the Supreme will said coldly, You should be glad that you're not lying. Otherwise, you would definitely not have lived until now. As soon as these words were spoken, Origin and Di Huang were immediately shocked. However, the two god spirits relaxed a little. Since the Supreme Will had said so, there must be a way to turn things around. As expected, the Supreme Will said again, on account that even though you took the wrong path, you didn't make a huge mistake, I can spare you. But in addition to my forgiveness, you also need the forgiveness of another person to truly live. Zhou. The Supreme I looked at Zhou fight and said, You will decide how they and the three races are punished. Don't worry about what I think. They're just three top-notch bloodline races. If they perish, so be it. I can easily recreate them if I want to. Origin and Di Huang immediately looked at Zhou fight nervously. On the surface, the heaven-cursed beast looked indifferent. Zhou saw this scene from Zhou's point of view and could not help but fall into deep thought. Since the Supreme Will had said so, there was definitely no detour. It really wanted me to deal with Origin, Di Huang, and the races behind them. With the Supreme Will's strength and status, if it had other thoughts it could just say it after all. There was no need to do this. He thought for 2 to 3 seconds before making a decision. Lord Supreme Will. I've decided to let go of the original spirit race, Shepherd's God race, and Chaos God Spirits race behind Origin and Di Huang. As for the heaven-cursed beast, I think I'll leave it to you to deal with them. But, when Origin and Di Huang heard Zhou's first words, they were immediately overjoyed. However, after hearing the "but" behind, they immediately became nervous. Zhou fight looked at them coldly and said, I can exempt you from the death penalty but I won't let you off. First of all, I want to ask the three races for compensation for this assassination. The three races want to hand over 90% of their assets and treasures to me. They can only leave 10% of their resources and treasures to maintain the basic operations of the race. Secondly, I want to reduce the original spirit race, the Shepherd's God race, and the Chaos God spirits race from top to bottom to the slave race of the human race. They have to be unconditionally and wholeheartedly loyal to us humans as slaves for 1,000,000 years before they can remove their slave race status and regain their freedom. Lastly, Origin and Di Huang. As the main culprits of this rebellion, I want you to commit suicide in front of me and use the zombie Dao secret technique to reincarnate into zombie god spirits to serve me. With that, Zhou Feit looked at Origin and Di Huang quietly. Chapter 1456, 310 Sacred Blessings Lord Talent, these are my 3 conditions. Aren't you willing? We're willing. Origin and Di Huang knelt down in ecstasy and immediately said, yes. This Lord of all races of the reserve army did not seek to destroy their souls and never reincarnate, nor did he cut off their divine spirit realm. He only made 2 requests that the defeated should have done in the first place. How could they not be happy? Money and treasures could be accumulated again after all. Even though it was embarrassing to be a slave, it was fine as long as they did not lose their lives and strength. Moreover, this was only being a slave for a limited period. While 100 million years sounded like a long time, god spirits, even low-tier deity-level elementary grade god spirits, had eternal lifespans. It would eventually pass if they endured it. As for becoming zombie god spirits, even though it was a little miserable and there was no possibility of further advancement, they could not care about anything else as long as they were still alive. From the looks of it, the request made by the Lord of all races was already the best outcome for them. At the thought of this, Origin and Di Huang were even grateful to the Lord of all races. Thank you, Lord of all races Reserve Army. Thank you, Lord of all races Reserve Army. The 2 god spirits were extremely grateful. They would never have dreamed that they would only receive a light punishment even though they had done such a treasonous thing. This was just like when the ministers besieged the crown prince, but in the end, the crown prince was saved. After the matter was settled, the ministers who besieged him only received the punishment of executing the chief villain, confiscating his family, and becoming a slave instead of having his entire family executed. This was just like when the ministers besieged the crown prince, but in the end, the crown prince was saved. After the matter was settled, the ministers who besieged him only received the punishment of executing the chief villain, confiscating his family, and becoming a slave instead of having his entire family executed. Zhou looked at them coldly. The reason for the light punishment was simple. He had already regarded the living beings of the myriad races in the world as his future subjects as a reserve army of the Lord of all races. It would be awesome if he were to let his thoughts run wild and annihilate the 3 races from top to bottom. However, from a long-term perspective, once he really became an official Lord of all races in the future, it would actually weaken his strength. Since the idea to kill him was jointly proposed by the Heaven Curse Beast, Origin, and Di Huang. In that case, he just had to kill the chief villain. There was no need to exterminate the other 3 clans. They would be his soldiers in the future after all. As for why Zhou ignored the Heaven Curse Beast, it was mainly because this Heaven Curse Beast was a little strange. Even the current Zhou could not see through this fellow's confidence. Even when Zhou asked the Bodhi Supreme privately, the Bodhi Supreme did not know anything. This really shocked Zhou. In the myriad worlds, there were very few things that even the Bodhi Supreme did not know. So far, Zhou only found something about Bodhi Supreme that he didn't understand on the incomplete illusionary legendary tier Sage Seal. And now, the Heaven Curse Beast was the second. Zhou had always rejected such a mysterious existence. Therefore, he did not do anything to the Heaven Curse Beast. Instead, he was handed over to the Supreme Will to deal with. Oh yes. Give me the ownership of your 10 sacred blessings Lord Talent. Zhou Feit suddenly said. Yes, Your Excellency. Origin and Di Huang did not dare to ask further. They saw an Epic Tier Advanced Grade Female Original Spirit Race member and an Epic Tier Intermediate Grade Shepherd's God Race member appear in front of Zhou Fight with a thought. They saw Zhou Fight take a look at them before the two losers could figure out what had happened. Then, they stopped breathing and fell to the ground, sleeping peacefully. Zhou Fight did not care that there were other god spirits watching. He extracted all the loots in their bodies with a light hook of his right hand. In the end, he obtained a total of 2 Mythical Tier 1 Lord Talent Spheres and 42 Mythical Tier 1 Lord Talent Crystal Fragments. The other loots were not worth mentioning. Zhou looked at the 2 Mythical Tier 1 Lord Talent Spheres. Treasure name, Lord Talent Sphere, protection of the origin of the original Master God. Treasure grade, Mythical Tier, unique, treasure effect, after absorbing it, the Lord will have the protection of the Mythical Tier's only Lord Talent, original Master God. Treasure description, a Lord Talent Sphere from an original Spirit Race citizen. After absorbing it, you can obtain a Mythical Tier unique Lord Talent. Treasure name, Lord Talent Sphere, King of all gods Di Huang's protection, treasure grade, Mythical Tier, unique, treasure effect. After absorbing it, the feudal lord will have mythical, tiers 1 and only Lord Talent, King of all gods Di Huang's protection. Treasure description, a Lord Talent Sphere from the Shepherd's God race. After absorbing it, you can obtain a Mythical Tier unique Lord Talent. When Zhou Fight saw the 2 Lord Talent Spheres, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Of the 10 Sacred Blessings Lord Talent, he had already obtained 8. There were only 2 more 10 Sacred Blessings Lord Talents left, and he would be able to gather all of them. One of them was on the Heaven Curse Beast. The other 10 Sacred Blessings Lord Talent came from the God of Death, Thanatos. It was easy to find out its whereabouts. He could just ask Bodhi Supreme later. Still. Now that the Yellow River has fallen and the Netherworld is adjacent to the Yellow River, I hope nothing happens. Zhou frowned slightly. Then, he looked at the Heaven Curse Beast through Zhou Fight's perspective. Heaven Curse Beast. Should I let you hand it over personally or let me find it myself? You should know that if I were to find it myself, it would only take some time at most. Zhou Fight said coldly. The Heaven Curse Beast was silent. Suddenly, an Epic Tier Advanced Grade by Zay appeared in front of the Heaven Curse Beast. Ancestor, the Heaven Curse Beast was a little dazed. In the next second, he was killed by Zhou's willpower, and then the spoils of war in his body were taken away out of thin air, including the Chaotic Beast God, the Heaven Curse Beast's 10 Sacred Blessings Lord Talent. Very good. After Zhou Fight checked and found that there was no problem, he could not help but smile. It was not far from the day when all the Lord Talents of the 10 Sacred Blessings were gathered. Then, he didn't immediately absorb the 3 Mythical Tier unique Lord Talents. Instead, he turned around and respectfully said to the Supreme Eye in the sky, Lord Supreme Will. I'm done here. As for the rest, Lord Supreme will make the final judgment. When Supreme Eye heard this, its gaze landed on Origin and Di Huang first. Then, it slowly said, since the Lord of all races reserve army spares your lives, your punishment will follow his decision and won't interfere. Only then did Origin and Di Huang heave a sigh of relief. They said gratefully, thank you, Supreme Will. Then, they bowed solemnly to Zhou Fight. Thank you, Lord of all races, for your kindness. Origin/Di Huang will never forget it. Zhou Fight nodded lightly. When the Supreme Will saw this, its gaze finally landed on the Heaven Curse Beast that had been neglected. The Heaven Curse Beast's body suddenly trembled. Then, the Supreme Eye said coldly in a voice that only Zhou could understand, Heaven Curse Beast. I didn't expect you to still be so dishonest after I brought you from the illusionary Great Cosmos to the real Great Cosmos for so many years. Chapter 1457, Heaven Curse Beast and Supreme Will. Zhou's pupils constricted when he heard the Supreme Will's words. Real Great Cosmos. Illusionary Great Cosmos. And this Heaven Curse Beast was personally brought over from the illusionary Great Cosmos by the Supreme Will? Could the Supreme Will not come from them, but from the illusionary Great Cosmos? However, how did the existence of the illusionary Great Cosmos come here legitimately and become a supreme existence like the Supreme Will? Wasn't the Supreme Will the daughter of the Chaos Will? At this moment, even though Zhou was quick-witted and had developed his mind, he was still a little stunned by this news. This short sentence contained too much terrifying content. I followed you to the real Great Cosmos to pursue freedom and happiness. Am not like a criminal who is imprisoned in this ghost-like place every day and never sees the light of day. The Heaven Curse Beast said viciously. You took the initiative to follow me. Who can you blame? If not for the fact that we're from the same place, I would have killed you long ago. The Supreme Will said calmly. You might as well just kill me. The Heaven Curse Beast roared. Oh, so why don't you get to know yourself? The Supreme Will said disdainfully, isn't it because I can't bear to part with your little life? You speak so fearlessly, as if you're not afraid of death. The Heaven Curse Beast stopped talking. Zhou was deep in thought. It seemed that even though this Heaven Curse Beast had been courting death, he was indeed afraid of death. However, why would he do such a contradictory thing? Was he trying to use such a contradictory move to attract the attention of the Supreme Will so that he could achieve his goal? He suddenly saw the Supreme Eye turn its gaze back to him. Common people's regal. The Supreme Eye said. Lord Supreme Will. Zhou said respectfully. You should already know about my conversation with the Heaven Curse Beast. I believe you should have some guesses in your heart, but you don't have to seek answers from me because with your strength, you don't have the right to know the answers to these questions for the time being. When you're strong enough, such as becoming a true lord of all races or reaching the Supreme Will realm, they'll naturally tell you everything. However, before that, don't ask or say anything. Keep everything you heard today to yourself. Don't tell anyone. As for them, the Supreme Eye looked at the confused Origin and Di Huang and said calmly, what we're seeing now is just an illusion I created. They don't know anything yet. Yes, Lord Supreme Will. I will definitely keep my mouth shut and not reveal anything I heard today. Zhou said without hesitation. The Supreme Will nodded and said, regarding the Heaven Curse Beast, I will personally lock him up. I will definitely not let him affect your future. Go to the ultimate void battleground after you've received everything from the three races. This was already the second time the Supreme Will had mentioned this. Leave these matters to my other clones. I will immediately bring the god spirits to the ultimate void battlefield. Zhou immediately said. The Supreme Will grunted in satisfaction again. Then, Zhou saw the Supreme Eye that emitted endless pure white light disappear from the Chaos Sea. Zhou heaved a sigh of relief. While this was not the first time he had seen this Supreme Eye that represented the Supreme Will, but he would feel an extremely terrifying and oppressive pressure every time. Willpower level powerhouses with willpower were really terrifying. He muttered inwardly. Then he turned to look at the place where the Heaven Curse Beast was. As expected, the Heaven Curse Beast had already disappeared. Clearly, it had been taken away by the Supreme Will. Seeing this, Zhou felt even more relaxed. The most unstable bomb was finally far away from him. He could really head to the ultimate void battleground without any worries. He looked at Origin and Di Huang again. When his gaze landed on the two top-notch master gods, the two divine bodies immediately trembled and hurriedly lowered their heads in fear. Zhou clicked his tongue in wonder. After this incident, at this moment, in their hearts, his deterrence was probably already comparable to a supreme god or even a willpower-level existence. He didn't think much of it. He looked at him with a faint smile and said, the heaven curse beast has been taken away by the supreme will and is personally punished by him. On the other hand, when are you two going to commit suicide and reincarnate as zombie god spirits? You're not going back on your word, are you? How dare we? Origin and Di Huang were shocked and immediately said, well, do as you say now. The two god spirits looked at each other and took a deep breath, directly causing the divine spark in their minds to explode. The divine spark was the source of life energy for the god spirits. Even their souls resided in the divine spark. It could be said to be related to everything the god spirits had. Origin and Di Huang almost died on the spot as soon as the divine spark shattered. Nonetheless, it was only almost. As top master gods, even if their divine sparks exploded, they could still survive for a while longer before they died. Then, they could take advantage of this time to do something they wanted to do. For example, transform into a zombie god spirit. They formed hand seals with both hands and chanted spells at the same time. Silently, a dark purple netherworld aura appeared behind them and vaguely condensed into a scene of the supreme netherworld. It was because the netherworld had sensed the death of two top master gods and was prepared to receive the aura of death that was bomb when they died and bring it to the netherworld. This could strengthen the foundation of the netherworld. It could also prevent these master god tier level death auras from wreaking havoc in the myriad worlds without external guidance and control. However, at this moment Origin and Di Huang's zombie god spirit's reincarnation law skill had already taken effect. An extremely strong suction force suddenly appeared in the bodies of the two deities. As soon as this suction force appeared, it instantly forcefully gathered the divine power, soul power, willpower, nomological power, death aura, and other powers that erupted from the destruction of the divine spark into this already dead corpse. Since these powerful master god tier powers were forcefully gathered together, coupled with the influence of the zombie god spirit's reincarnation law skill, they began to quickly transform their corpses. At this rate, it would not take 100 years for these two top-notch master gods to complete the transformation and become top-notch zombie god spirits. In terms of combat strength, they even surpassed themselves when they were alive. The only disadvantage was that he could not continue to advance. However, Zhou Feit frowned slightly when he saw this. Who would have the time to wait for him to undergo 100 years of transformation? He calmly waved his hand and set up a time acceleration domain and a zombie god spirit's reincarnation domain around the two god spirits. With the support of these two top-notch nomological domains, the two god spirits spent more than 20 years in the domain in just a minute. They successfully completed the reincarnation process of the zombie god spirits and became two official zombie god spirits. Seeing this, Zhou Feit withdrew his domain. Soon, Origin and Di Huang, who had become zombie god spirits, woke up one after another. Chapter 1458, Zombie God Spirits. Tears of Chaos. The two of them were not surprised when they saw the unchanged Zhou Feit and the unchanged environment in front of them. They immediately bowed and said respectfully before they could sense the changes in their bodies. Origin/Di Huang greets Master. Since they were the leaders of the slave races, there was nothing wrong with calling Zhou Master. Zhou Feit nodded slightly with a faint smile on his face. These two fellows entered into their roles very quickly. However, he quickly shook his head. Just address me as Emperor like everyone else. All right. Feel your bodies and adapt to your new divine bodies. Origin and Di Huang nodded and began to feel their zombie god spirits. Then, bitter smiles appeared on the two god spirits' faces. They could feel that their divine bodies were extremely pure. What did this mean? That was, there was no power of laws, no power of the soul, no power of will, and not even divine power in their bodies. They couldn't even do the most basic and simple thing for god spirits. Even, their thoughts were not their soul's thoughts, but the thoughts of this dead body based on its powerful physical instincts. All they had now were their own pure and powerful corpses. These corpses were even stronger than the heaven-cursed divine body of the heaven-cursed beast that was previously known as the number one divine body. If they were to evaluate their current combat power, they could guarantee that even if they could use the power of laws, the power of the soul, the power of will, divine power, and even the power of external objects when they were alive. However, when all these powers were added together, they were still inferior to their current selves. They could now hammer themselves when they were alive. Even so, they still could not be happy. In fact, there was a faint sense of sorrow in their hearts. Zombie god spirits. To put it nicely, they had jumped out of the world and was not in the myriad laws. To put it bluntly, in the eyes of other god spirits, other than being unbelievably powerful, they were almost no different from dead things. But at least, we still exist, don't we? They comforted themselves in their hearts. Then, he said respectfully to Zhou Fight. Your Majesty. Right now, we feel that our corporeal bodies are unprecedentedly powerful. They are even stronger than the heaven-cursed beast, who is known as the number one corporeal body among Master God tiers. However, apart from our physical bodies, we are unable to use any other methods. This is good. Follow this emperor in the future. However, you have to return to your clans now and collect the resources in your clans as soon as possible and send them to this emperor according to this emperor's previous request. Do you understand? Zhou Fight said calmly. Yes, Your Majesty. The two god spirits said respectfully. Zhou Fight nodded and said to Origin, just now, the Supreme will give this emperor another 2 million god spirits, 100,000 true god tiers, and 100 supremacies a spot in the ultimate void battlefield. You will still be in charge of selecting and contacting these god spirits. In a day, this emperor will see them appear on the ultimate void battlefield. Yes, Your Majesty. Origin was envious, but he said respectfully on the surface. Zhou Fight nodded and called Bai Yun, Feng Luo, Ying Ning, and Ying Ning's father, Haze of Chaos, over. Soon, the four god spirits flew over. Greetings, Your Majesty. The four god spirits said respectfully. Zhou Fight looked at Bai Yun first. Bai Yun, prepare yourself. In a while, lead the candidates of the gods who have been prepared to head to the ultimate void battleground. Prepare to follow this emperor to the ultimate void battleground. Your Majesty, are you in such a hurry? Bai Yun was stunned. The war on their side had just ended, and the battlefield had yet to be cleaned up. The Supreme Will has already urged us twice. If we don't hurry up, we won't be giving the Supreme Will any face. Besides, that Lord of 10,000 Evils is probably waiting for us to head to the ultimate void battlefield. He is probably already waiting for us. We can't let him down. Zhou Fight said with a faint smile. As a reserve army of the Lord of all races, he really wanted to meet this Lord of 10,000 Evils. Understood, Your Majesty. I will prepare it immediately. Bai Yun also realized the severity of the matter. She did not expect the Supreme Will to personally urge her. This matter could not be delayed any longer. Go on. Zhou Fight nodded. Bai Yun bowed respectfully before turning around to gather the god spirits. Feng Luo. Seeing Bai Yun leave, Zhou Fight's gaze fell on Feng Luo. I'm here. Feng Luo said respectfully. At this moment, Feng Luo seemed to have returned to his original state after receiving the supreme god of the Heavenly Blade's inheritance. He did not look sharp at all. Those who did not know would never have thought that this was a fierce man who had become a master god tier with the path of the saber. Zhou Fight thought of the quiet supreme god of the Heavenly Blade puppet looking at Feng Luo. The temperament of the two gods actually overlapped at this moment. It seems that you are getting along well with the inheritance of the supreme god of the heavenly blade. Zhou Feit said with a faint smile. Thank you for your gift, your majesty. The inheritance of the supreme god of the heavenly blade is indeed very compatible with me. The night I received the inheritance of the supreme god of the heavenly blade, I had already begun to understand the basics. Feng Luo said. Zhou Feit clicked his tongue in wonder. Ing Ning and Haze of Chaos were envious. That was the inheritance of a supreme god, and it was the inheritance of a top supreme god. Who wouldn't be envious? Even at the peak of the chaos human race, such legacies were extremely rare. Almost only the patriarch and the highest elder had the qualifications to come into contact with them. Not bad. Zhou Feit first praised before saying, this emperor and Bai Yi will head to the ultimate void battleground in a while. In the future, the Blazing Sun army will be temporarily handed over to you to manage. When we fight in the ultimate void battleground, don't stop conquering. This emperor hopes that when we return, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom will already be an advanced grade Divine Kingdom. Don't disappoint this emperor and Bai Yun. I won't let you down. Feng Luo said solemnly. His Majesty was willing to hand over such a huge responsibility to him. Just how much trust did he have in him? He must not let His Majesty down. Otherwise, even if he died to atone for his sins, his death would not be worth pitying. Zhou Feit nodded. He was naturally at ease. Even if he went to the ultimate void battleground, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom still had other clones and main bodies holding down the fort after all. With them around, nothing major would naturally happen. He had only said those words to give Feng Luo some motivation. He admired quite a bit and had the intention of nurturing him after all. Finally, Zhou Feit's gaze landed on Ing Ning and Haze of Chaos. Ing Ning, Haze of Chaos. Zhou Feit said, now that the Chaos Beast clan has completely declined, the Chaos Sea has completely fallen into my hands. In the future, this place should be used as the hometown of the Chaos Humans. You'll continue to run this place. I hope that after you return to the Chaos Sea, you can restore the glory of the Chaos Humans at their peak. Your Majesty. You're really the savior of our Chaos Human race. When Haze of Chaos heard Zhou Feit's words, he could not help but burst into tears. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.